1,000 worlds, 1,000 loves.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Belle X Harem one-shot love stories movie. Before we start, please go support Aario9 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken characters' gender, but of course Belle is a male. San Valentine Belxalize. Today was a very special day for the people of Aario, a date that had become popular in the city in recent years thanks to some gods who gave the idea of celebrating it. And that was Valentine's Day, a day of love and friendship, a day to spend with the person you loved or those special friends. And our Cranel family was a little surprised by that celebration in Aario, since in the villages they didn't have that kind of celebration, and since they were still on vacation in Aario they decided to enjoy that day. There were still a few days left before returning to their village and continuing with their work. But the most excited about all of this was Allies, wanting to give her beloved husband a gift for that day to show him how much she loved him, although the truth is she didn't have to show anything, she already showed a lot by being with him, but she still wanted to do something. I think the most popular gift these days is chocolate was Noin's reply after Allies asked him what to give as a gift. So chocolate, the Redeed whispered, tapping her chin with a finger. Not to brag, but chocolate was her specialty. She made delicious desserts with it. After meditating a little, I looked at the clock on the wall of the headquarters and saw that it was 9 in the morning. Elle had gone out to the city with Shiro. They were both going to pay Hermes a short visit, so he had time to prepare the gift. Scarlet, we have to get your father a present. Ally suggested to her daughter, who was thrilled to hear that. Yes. We have to surprise Dad. The red-haired girl said excitedly. But what will we do? We're going to make the best chocolate in the world, she said decisively. So we need to prepare all the ingredients. I think there are enough ingredients in the kitchen, Astria said, approaching them both with a smile. Did you make hot chocolate? Allies asked, confused. Well, yesterday Kagaya bought ingredients and spent a lot of time in the kitchen, maybe she made chocolates too. At that moment, little Scarlet's mind clicked, understanding what was happening. Mom, your spinster aunt wants to surprise Dad with chocolate before you do. Cried the alarmed little girl. What? I shouted in surprise. Damn it. I underestimated Kagaya. We have to hurry, Mom. We can't let her get Dad's attention. She shouted worriedly, grabbing her mother's hand and running towards the kitchen. We have to make an effort, Scarlet. As they went to the kitchen, Lyra approached Astria with an anime-style sweat drop. Why is she worried? Belle is her husband, she already won the battle 10 years ago, she said, confused. He probably wants to take that little competition seriously, Astria said with a small smile. I admire Kagaya, she still hasn't given up I think. For a moment I thought she'd forgotten about him, but it seems she still has feelings for him, she said, crossing her arms. Maybe I should give her some chocolate too. Upon hearing those words, Astria and Noin, who was still there, turned to look at her in surprise. What? It's not just Valentine's Day, it's also Friendship Day, and that idiot is my friend. Maybe I should make one for my 2 nephews too, she said, starting to walk. But I'm too lazy to cook, so I'll go buy them. Thus the hobbit left the headquarters, leaving both women alone. Haha, their presence has really livened things up here at headquarters, Astria said happily. Will you give Bella chocolate too? No thanks, I don't want to earn a jealous look from my niece, Noin said with a nervous smile. Meanwhile in the kitchen. I definitely underestimated Kagaya, Ally said after looking at the ingredients in the kitchen. I was expecting to find chocolate bars, but there was only cocoa. In short, Kagaya made her chocolate from scratch, a 100% homemade chocolate made by herself. I admit it, Aunt Kagaya is a formidable opponent, said little Scarlet, standing on a small stool to reach the kitchen. Are you going to give up, Mom? Never. I exclaimed with determination. We're going to make a much better hot chocolate. She wasn't angry that Kagaya was trying to give her husband chocolate. Allies was aware that her friend had been in love with Belle for years, but she knew that she loved her friendship with her much more and wouldn't do anything to ruin it. But of course, no one could erase her feelings, so she would give that chocolate to Belle. And that's why she would accept that battle out of respect for Kagaya's fighting spirit and because of the small jealousy she felt. Which formula do we need, Mom? Formula A, B, or C? The girl asked, since she also knew a little about it. She helped her mother a lot, after all. None of them, Allies replied, taking a black scarf and tying it around her head. We'll use Formula X. X? Exclaimed the girl in surprise. But we still can't quite grasp that formula. We're playing with forces we don't understand. Trust me, Scarlet, Ally said, stroking her daughter's hair and smiling. It's a chocolate for your father, so it has to be a very special one, so it's worth the risk. Fine, the girl agreed resolutely. We can't let Aunt Kagaya win. We have to give it our all. And with those words, mother and daughter set to work preparing the best chocolate for the most special man in their lives. Meanwhile, in another part of Aario, Belle was walking calmly through the streets holding little Shiro's hand after visiting Hermes. He had been in the city for many days and everything had been quiet. Almost everyone had forgotten what happened in the Dark Era because they didn't recognize him, although a few did recognize him, but left him alone when they saw how strong he was. "Dad, why are so many people kissing?" asked little Shiro, watching the loving couples in the streets. "Because today is Valentine's Day. Didn't Aunt Nese explain that to you?" she asked with a slight smile. "Yes, but I still don't understand," the boy whispered. "Why only this day? You celebrate it all year round." "What do you mean?" he asked, confused. "You and Mom always show each other that you love each other every day, that means Valentine's Day is celebrated every day for the two of you." Do you think so?" he asked, embarrassed. The truth was, it was impossible for him not to behave this way with allies. After all, his beloved Redeed was very affectionate and loving towards him, not minding kissing him in public. It was a very cute side of her. "Like that night at the village house where you told her you would show her all the love you felt and she told you she wanted to play teacher and student. What did you mean by that?" he asked curiously. "Shiro, sometimes I wonder why you're so curious and observant," Belle said with a nervous and embarrassed smile. She had to tell allies to turn down the volume every time they had their steamy games at night. At that rate, Shiro would ask her about it daily and she wanted to avoid that awkwardness. "Hey, by the way, are you hungry?" I asked, changing the subject. "Now that you mention it, yes," the boy whispered, touching his stomach. "Do you want something specific?" "Jack American, I heard it's a popular food here," he said, eager to try the dish. "Jack American. Great. I think I saw a stall a few streets back. Let's go." And taking their son's hand so as not to lose him, they went to look for the blessed Jack American to satisfy their stomachs. After walking for a few minutes they arrived at the blessed stall, where a small woman with pigtails was attending to two very identical blonde women. For some reason I feel like I know her, Belle thought, getting closer and closer to the blondes. "And here's your order, Ace. I'm surprised your mom eats the same amount as you," said the girl with pigtails, handing over 2 large bags of Jack American. "I'm surprised too," she said, looking with a chibi face at her mother, who was embarrassed for being a glutton. But seconds later, the girl A smiled, a smile she hadn't shown for years. "Come on, Mom, there are still many parts of the city I want to show you," she said, her excitement evident on her face. Thus, the two blondes, with their Jack American order in hand, walked away from the place while chatting animatedly. "Oh, I see, it's that girl from the war," Belle said, a little surprised to see that she was now a teenager. It really had been a long time. I thought she didn't have a mother. Oh well. Downplaying the incident, Belle approached the stall with his son, who was excited to try the famous Jack American. "2 Jack American please, Goddess-sama," he politely requested, sensing the woman's divine aura. "At your service," he said with a smile, starting to prepare them while Shiro anxiously watched the preparation. While preparing the food, Belle began to observe people walking with big smiles through the streets, making him smile slightly. Turning his mind to the past, he recalled the traumatized and hopeless expressions of the inhabitants, depressing memories. Luckily that was already part of the past. The sacrifice of all the warriors who died in that war was worth it. Now that I think about it, I haven't seen her. I wonder how she is, Belle thought, remembering a certain smiling face and a certain embarrassing moment. "Ready?" said the little goddess, extending the Jack American. Shiro excitedly took his, and Belle did too, about to pay for them. But before he could give the money, someone else got there first and gave the money to the goddess. "I'll pay," said a female voice, handing over the vouchers. "Huh? Well," the goddess agreed, not downplaying the matter. While Belle, confused, turned his gaze to the person who paid the Jack American for him, he was surprised to see who it was. "RD," Belle whispered in surprise. "Hi Belle," the girl greeted with a beautiful smile. RD had also changed over the years. She was a little taller, with a much more mature body and expression, but she still maintained that kind and innocent smile that characterized her. "It makes me so happy to see you again, Belle," RD said, putting her hands behind her back. "When Lyra told me you were back in town, I was so excited. I was hoping you'd come visit, but it's been so long. You're mean." I'm sorry," Belle apologized nervously as he saw RD puff out her cheeks, feigning anger. Meanwhile, Shiro just watched curiously the interaction between the two adults while taking a bite out of his Jack American. "Scarlett told me to watch out for Dad from women who try to flirt with him. Did she mean this?" the little boy wondered, not quite sure. "I was planning to visit you, but I've been busy," he explained with a nervous smile. "And when would that be?" I asked, smiling slightly at how nervous the albino was. Although she was also a little nervous, she hadn't expected Belle's new appearance at all. When Lyra told her that he was now quite the heartthrob, she didn't believe he was that handsome. "Calm down, RD," she thought, shaking her head until she noticed little Shiro staring at her. "Oh. Is this your son?" "Yes, I'd like you to meet Shiro. Say hello, son." "She's a friend of Dad's," Belle said, stroking the little boy's hair. RD knelt on the ground to be at Shiro's height and looked at him with a kind smile. "Nice to meet you, Shiro. I see you look a lot like your father," RD greeted, trying to be as friendly as possible. He didn't want to upset Belle's children. Meanwhile, Shiro just stared at RD as if she were analyzing her, something that made the girl a little nervous. "Shiro?" Belle called, surprised by his son's silence. "Do you like my dad?" But without warning, Shiro blurted out a question, surprising both adults. Surprise that later turned into embarrassment. Well, RD began to stutter, not knowing what to say. "I see, so you're one of those threats my sister was talking about," the little boy whispered, his eyes narrowed. "Although I remain silent when I receive a light tap on the head from my father. Sorry about that, RD, when he was a kid he fell off Alice's bed, that's why he says nonsensical things sometimes." Belle apologized with a nervous smile. Don't worry, the N children are very playful," RD whispered, trying to hide her blush. "Did I fall out of bed?" Shiro asked in surprise. Changing the subject, "How have you been?" Belle asked, starting to walk without letting go of his son's hand, and RD positioned herself next to him. "I'd say well," she replied, playing with her hair, which was longer than before. "The first year after the war was difficult because of Ganesha-sama's absence, but we all managed to pull through. Now I'm a level 6 nearing the end of my journey." "Incredible, I imagine you worked very hard to get there," Belle congratulated, smiling slightly and embarrassing RD. "My dad's popular with the ladies," Shiro thought, noticing RD's obvious interest in her father. "I hope I'll have the same luck when I grow up." "And how have you been?" RD asked, wanting to keep the conversation going. "Lyra told me some things, but I'd like to hear from you." "Well, Alice and I live in a village far from Aario where we have our own bakery, which is doing very well," he replied, then stroked his son's hair after giving him his Jack American, which the boy gladly accepted. "And as you can see, we have 2 little angels. I still need to introduce you to Scarlet. I'm sure she'll like you." "I doubt it," Shiro thought, taking a bite of his Jack American. "Wow, it seems you and Alice have lived very happily outside of Aario," RD said with a slight smile, though trying to hide the sadness she felt. Although 10 years had passed, she hadn't been interested in another boy. She thought she had forgotten Belle, but when she saw him again after so many years, she realized that her feelings were still intact. "I couldn't help but feel a little envious of Alice, although I was also happy for her. In a few days I would go to visit her and say hello. Yes, I feel very fortunate to have her by my side," he said, remembering the face of his beautiful wife. "Oh, right." Then RD remembered something, taking an object out of the small bag and giving it to Belle. "Happy Valentine's Day, Belle," she said with a small smile. Belle curiously picked up the object, seeing that it was a chocolate shaped like a rabbit. "I knew it. It's a threat," the alarmed boy thought. "I would have to give the report to my sister when I get back to headquarters. I prepared it this morning, I hope you like it," she said, a little embarrassed. "RD, thank you very much," he said with a smile, making the girl's heart race, who quickly turned her back on him. Well, I'd like to keep talking, but I have things to do," I stammered, blushing slightly. "I hope we can read some hero stories before you go back to your village. Goodbye." And with that goodbye, RD ran off. "Goodbye, see you soon," Belle said with a smile as she watched her friend walk away. He was glad that RD hadn't changed her personality. She was still the same lively girl she'd always been. Before leaving, he'd give her a gift. After all, it was thanks to her that Valletta hadn't managed to kidnap him. "Dad, you're a womanizer," Shiro whispered, looking reproachfully at her father. "But teach me your secret." "Huh? What do you mean?" he asked, puzzled, continuing his walk towards headquarters. "Even so, Mom is the best, nobody compares to her." "I don't know what you're saying, but you're right about that," he said, lifting his son onto his shoulders. "Alice is the perfect woman." As the two of them walked away, RD was hiding in an alley with a flushed face, while Shakti stood in front of her, shaking her head slightly. "I can't believe you're going after a married man," Shakti said disapprovingly. "Why, you're wrong. I like him, but I'm not going after him," I explained, embarrassed. "Really? Then why did you get up early to make the hot chocolate?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. RD tried to answer but remained silent, only able to lower her gaze in embarrassment, making Shakti laugh. "Don't worry, I'm sure you in another reality are living happily with him," she said, stroking her hair. "But that's her, not me," she whispered, puffing out her cheeks. "Haha, come on, we have a lot of paperwork at headquarters." And taking her sister with them, they returned to headquarters to complete their work after she spent a few minutes with Belle as she had wanted. The albino was popular without knowing it. Meanwhile, at the Astria family headquarters, mother and daughter looked with satisfied smiles at the chocolate they had prepared, which was already inside a heart-shaped box. "We did a great job, my little Scarlet," Alice congratulated, taking off the apron she was wearing. "Yes. This will definitely impress Dad," exclaimed the excited little girl. "You and I did it, so we'll both impress him," she said, lifting her daughter into her arms. "Now we just have to wait for him to return to headquarters to surprise him." "That's right, Shiro has to give me the daily report," the girl said seriously. "What report?" Alice asked curiously. "It's just our game," he replied with an innocent smile. "That smells so delicious." The one who said those words was Niece, who approached the kitchen upon smelling the delicious aroma. "Chocolate," she exclaimed upon seeing one of her favorite sweets in front of her, wanting to take it. But Alice quickly hit him on the hand with the spatula, making him groan in pain. "Stop, that chocolate is for my husband," Alice warned, threatening to hit her again. "For Belle. If I remember correctly, he didn't like sweets very much," she said, rubbing her hand. "That's all in the past, now he's as big a fan as I am," she said proudly. "I have some left over on the beechwood table, so you can have it." With a smile, Niece walked towards that place to keep the remaining chocolate and enjoy it. "I wonder when Dad and Shiro will be back?" Scarlet asked, wanting to give her father the gift. "They must be on their way by now. In the meantime, let's read a story," he said, walking towards a nearby sofa that had a book on it. "What do you think, Argonaut?" "Yes. It's Dad's favorite story," she said enthusiastically, starting to read alongside her mother while they waited for the albino duo. Perhaps after a few minutes they would go to wait for him outside. Meanwhile, with the albino duo, they were already close to the headquarters while chatting about any random topic to lighten the walk a little. Or so it was until Belle noticed a person leaning against the mansion's gates as if waiting for someone. Slowly, she lowered her son from her shoulders, took his hand, and continued on her way to the person who noticed her presence. "Hello Kagaya," Belle greeted with a friendly smile. "Hello Belle," the Oriental woman greeted calmly. Belle just watched as Kagaya had something behind her. He had an idea but would wait for her to say something. "I see that you and Shiro enjoyed the date together," he said, looking at the little boy who was watching a butterfly fly around him. "You're right, he was playing with Asfi for a while, although Hermes-sama tried to make some small jokes but failed in the attempt," he said, letting out a small laugh. "You know, I think the god Hermes is a bad influence on children," Kagaya said with an anime-style sweat drop. "Haha, you think so? Asfi tells me the same thing," she said with a nervous smile. "And how was your day?" "Well, normal, a little training and a walk around the city. Since Evilus disappeared, Aario is very quiet. They probably hardly have any work anymore." "Not much, just the occasional thief around, nothing complicated," she said, looking for the right moment to give him the chocolate until she noticed something in Belle's hands. "Huh? Is that chocolate?" Kagaya asked, seeing the small box Belle was carrying. "Yes, I ran into RD on the way and she gave them to me. I'm glad to see that nothing has changed," she said happily looking at the chocolate. "I see," I whispered, a little hesitant about whether to give her the chocolate I prepared or not. "First of all, why did he do it?" She wasn't going to achieve anything by doing it. Belle was married, he loved allies, they had a beautiful family, and she had no intention of ruining all that, although it wasn't like she could achieve anything either. If he was already aware of all that and didn't want to ruin the relationship, then why do it? Why give that silly albino a chocolate bar? "Because I like him," she thought, looking down. "Even if I don't achieve anything, I want to give him this." The events of the previous night came back to her, remembering how she had failed multiple times to make her chocolate until she finally managed to make a delicious one, which she wrapped very well in that square box, waiting for the moment to give it to him, and now that it was in front of him, she began to doubt. "What am I doing?" she thought with a crooked smile. "Alice is my friend, she'll surely be angry if I give this to her, it's best if I give it to that gluttonese, it's for the best." But before he could think any more, a small piece of paper hit him on the head, which he caught with his free hand. "Do it." Those were the words that the small note said. I quickly looked up to see who threw that at me, watching as Alice quickly entered the headquarters. That silly girl," he thought, chuckling slightly. "Doesn't she make you jealous?" While inside the headquarters. "Mom? What are you doing?" "You're helping the enemy," Scarlet shouted in alarm. "It's necessary," Alice replied with a small smile. "I want to help Kagaya. She hasn't realized it, but that chocolate is a way for her to let go of her feelings and turn the page. She wants to express her feelings for Belle, even just once, and then let them go, and I'll help her. My husband is such a charmer. Should I be worried?" "Of course. Don't you have any idea how many women in town are interested in him?" "What?" Returning outside to headquarters. In making her decision, Kagaya called the albino. And? Happy Valentine's Day, she said with a small smile, extending the box of chocolates toward him. I know you don't have much of a sweet tooth, but I hope you enjoy it. Kagaya, he whispered, a little surprised, taking the box in his hands. Take it also as an apology for the assassination attempts against you in the past, she said with a nervous smile, trying to hide her slight blush. Meanwhile, Bell just stared at the Asian woman. He wasn't stupid. He was aware that Kagaya was in love with him. He knew it the day before the final war began, and he was very surprised to see her attitude towards him after 10 years, realizing that she was still in love with him. He felt flattered that such a beautiful woman as Kagaya had such feelings for him, but he already had a very special woman who owned his heart, so he couldn't reciprocate, and Kagaya knew that. And even knowing that, she had the courage to prepare that chocolate. Kagaya was always a girl who had the courage to do things. Kagaya, thank you, he whispered, approaching her and giving her a hug. Perhaps he couldn't reciprocate his feelings, but he could give him a hug as thanks for everything he did for him, remembering how he risked his life to get him out of jail that night. A slight blush adorned the cheeks of the Oriental woman as she felt the warmth that Bell transmitted through the hug, a warm and pleasant sensation. And to think that Allies enjoys it every day, he thought with a slight smile, savoring that hug, even if just once. I really envy you, Allies. Perhaps it was time to forget those feelings and move on with her life. Maybe she couldn't be with him, but she poured all her feelings into that chocolate, which he accepted. It would be a way to say goodbye once and for all and move on. Kagaya. What? Well, how do I put it? She said with a nervous smile. I think the hug lasted a long time. But suddenly Allies appeared in front of the gate with her arms crossed, along with Scarlet, who was copying her mother's position, both with a serious expression. Kagaya quickly pulled away, her face flushed and flustered from having been caught in that hug. But I couldn't help it, it was a warm embrace in those strong arms. I admit it, Aunt Kagaya, you are persistent, Scarlet said, narrowing her eyes. I think I was going to sharpen my katana, he said, taking a few steps back, trying his best to hide his embarrassment. Goodbye, idiot, enjoy the chocolate. See you at dinner, she said with a nervous smile. Then turning around, Kagaya walked quickly away from the place under the watchful gaze of both Reeds. I told you that you were giving the enemy too much of an advantage, the girl scolded her mother. It was necessary, Allies excused herself, then approached her husband. And you? Bell became nervous when he saw Allies approaching him, thinking she would scold him for hugging her friend, even though he had no such intentions. But instead of a scolding, she received a soft kiss on her cheek, feeling embarrassed by the sudden display of affection. Thank you for not refusing Kagaya's chocolate, she said with a smile. She didn't want to see her friend sad. Now she could move on. But even so, that silly girl hugged you for a long time, she whispered, clinging to Bell in a hug. Don't be jealous, Allies, he said, stroking the girl's hair. You know I love you. I know that, you idiot. Well, with the little ones. Soldier Shiro, report. Scarlet said to the small albino. Yes. I exclaimed in a military pose. It seems a certain girl named RD is also very interested in Dad. RD? Allies exclaimed in surprise, pulling away from the hug. Scarlet, she's the one we should be worried about. She used to steal Bell's attention because she has the same taste in heroes. She's a threat. I knew it. Exclaimed the worried little girl. While Bell only had a nervous smile as he watched the little games his wife was playing with their daughter, he hoped they were just their games and nothing more. I'm hungry, she thought, looking at both chocolates. A little while later. Harem. Happy Valentine's Day. And now we find ourselves in the headquarters room where only the Cranel family was, with Allies giving Bell the chocolate she prepared with her daughter. Ooh-oh. Bell exclaimed in surprise upon seeing the incredible chocolate in front of him. Mom put a lot of effort into preparing it, the girl said happily, seeing her father's surprised expression. Don't lie, Scarlet, you also helped me a lot in the preparation, so don't give me all the credit, she said, stroking her daughter's hair, who laughed a little. Wow, I feel luckier every day to have you both, Belle said with a warm smile, kissing Allies on the lips and Scarlet on the forehead. Thank you so much. Shiro just puffed out her cheeks at the sight, which Allies found endearing. What's wrong, Shiro? Doridide asked, kneeling in front of her son. I wanted a chocolate too, he whispered dejectedly. Well, you're in luck because here's yours, she said, showing a box slightly smaller than Belle's with chocolates inside. Shiro took the box with a gleam of happiness in her eyes. Are they for me? I asked excitedly. All yours, my little soldier, she said, stroking his hair. And upon receiving confirmation from her mother, Shiro began to eat the chocolates with a happy smile. The chocolates that RD and Kagaya prepared are also delicious, Belle commented, tasting both chocolates. But mom's is better, said Scarlet, puffing out her cheeks. Haha, that's true, she said, gently pinching her daughter's nose. Allies just watched with a smile full of happiness as her two precious children and her husband enjoyed their chocolates. If I had made a bad decision in the past, perhaps I wouldn't be seeing this beautiful scene. But I'm sure of one thing, she thought, looking at Belle's smiling face. Even when I thought you were a traitor, I never stopped loving you, and because of that, I had many arguments with the girls. She remembered fondly the day she met him, when she was following that thief, and Belle stretched out his foot to make him fall. The moment their eyes met, their beautiful love story had begun. A story that was far from over. I think it's time we had another child, she thought with a slight smile, wanting to expand her small family. Allies, come eat some chocolate or these two gluttons will finish it all, said Belle, watching his children eat mercilessly. But I think we'll leave it for another day, Allies thought with an embarrassed smile, knowing how they both were when they were in bed. I didn't want to wake anyone up at headquarters. When we get back to town, I'll tell them my plans, she thought, walking towards her family and receiving a chocolate bar from her husband. Delicious. Mom, that RD woman makes good chocolates. You have to be careful. Scarlett warned, enjoying the chocolate from the younger Varma, making both adults laugh. It was undoubtedly a very fun first Valentine's Day for the Cranel family. And jealousy, Bellex rose. Leaning against the guild counter was a very beautiful red-haired beastman woman who had been in that position for about half an hour, observing the guild entrance. Every so often the woman would let out a sigh to continue her work, which was organizing some papers, but without taking her eyes off the entrance. And obviously that behavior was noticed by all her co-workers and some adventurers who looked at her as very beautiful as she had that expression of wanting to see someone. What's wrong with Rose? A counselor whispered to one of her colleagues. It seems her boyfriend hasn't come to visit her since yesterday, she replied with amusement. Wow, I didn't know Rose was the type to miss her boyfriend quickly. Rose frowned angrily upon hearing those whispers. Being a beastman, she could easily hear them. Why hasn't that idiot come to visit me? She thought, wishing that white hair would appear at the entrance. Elle hadn't appeared at the guild since yesterday. The last time he saw him he seemed excited for some reason, and he hadn't seen him since. Yesterday she intended to visit him after work, but because of that idiot Misha, she had to stay late helping her with paperwork, so she had to go straight home to rest, and now she had been waiting all morning for him to show up, which hadn't happened yet. Maybe Belle got tired of you. She didn't even need to turn around to see who said those words. She simply raised her hand, grabbed the head of whoever was behind her, and slammed it hard against the counter, noticing that her victim had pink hair. Shut your mouth, Misha, and do your job, said the grumpy she-wolf. Sorry, he apologized, slowly falling to the ground in pain. Although without realizing it, those words affected Rose a little. What if he really got tired of her? It's true that in recent weeks she had been acting a little more affectionate and clingy towards him, but she did it to show him that she truly loved him. They had been dating for many months, and it was impossible for her not to behave that way. Ever since their first intimate night, she had begun to behave in that loving way with Belle, and that made her feel happy. But he never stopped to think if that behavior tired Belle, perhaps it even seemed annoying to him. What am I thinking? She scolded herself for having such stupid thoughts. Belle loves me, I shouldn't doubt him. I'm having these thoughts because of Misha's stupid words. What did I do now? The human asked, puzzled as she saw the werewolf looking at her angrily. After calming down, Rose sighed and continued watching the entrance to the guild. He's probably busy with something with his team, he thought, which was most likely the case. He and his group had been in a lot of trouble ever since they survived that minotaur some time ago. I'd better concentrate on my work. And just as she was ready to work, a head of white hair appeared in the doorway, quickly catching her attention. When she saw that it was her beloved boyfriend, she couldn't help but smile happily. Elle. Her cheerful greeting was cut short when she saw that the smiling albino was not alone. He was accompanied by another girl who looked shy and very beautiful. Oh! Exclaimed Misha in surprise, settling back on the counter to watch everything that would happen. Rose. Elle greeted him with a smile as he stood before his girlfriend. Hello Belle, she greeted, still a little confused, looking at the girl who was next to her boyfriend, who was observing the albino with admiration. For a few seconds, a strange discomfort appeared in her. It was jealousy. I'm sorry I didn't come yesterday, but I was busy with very important things with Kami-sama, he explained, bowing in front of her. Relax, I understand, she said, waiting for him to introduce the mysterious girl. So, what was this important thing you were doing? When he asked that question, Belle's smile grew even wider. How I loved that smile. Kami-sama decided to recruit new members for the family, he explained excitedly. I was with her to see the new recruits, although unfortunately, almost all of them weren't to Kami-sama's liking, he whispered dejectedly, though he immediately smiled again. But now I'm not alone anymore. There's a new member in the family. He excitedly approached the girl standing next to him and introduced her. She is Iris, she is the newest member of the Hestia family. And nice to meet you, Rose-san. The captain told me a lot about you, the girl whispered shyly. Captain. Belle smiled, embarrassed and happy about what the girl called him, not bothering to hide it. And that made Rose a little jealous. She understood Belle and his happiness. After all, he'd always wanted more family members, and now he wasn't the only one anymore. But why did it have to be a woman as beautiful as her? Nice to meet you, Rose greeted in an emotionless tone. But Belle didn't even notice. He was just excited to have a new member in the family. I would like to register Iris as an adventurer, she is also eager to explore the dungeon. With an emotionless expression, Rose took a sheet of paper and handed it to the girl. Write your details here. Oh, of course, she said, walking toward some seats to write down her information, and Belle went with her to help her in case she had any questions. And while all that was happening, Rose just watched her boyfriend smile, a smile that only she had the privilege of receiving, but curiously, this time it wasn't directed towards her. Again a pain appeared in her, but she continued to remain calm. After a few minutes, both teenagers returned to the counter with all the data recorded on the sheet, which Rose took and set aside. Would you like to have an advisor? I asked, looking at the girl. And no, the captain is very experienced in the dungeon, so he will teach me everything I need to know, the girl refused, looking embarrassed at Belle. You embarrass me, Iris, and she laughed shyly. After doing a few more things at the registry, the girl was officially an adventurer, and since she already had equipment with her, she could start exploring immediately. Well, Rose, Iris Ann and I will go to the dungeon to explore, we have to make the most of our time, he said, still excited. Of course, be careful, he whispered. Yes. Let's go, Iris Ann. And so the two teenagers left the guild while chatting animatedly under Rose's watchful eye until she lost sight of them. When Rose was alone, she slowly brought her hand to her cheek as a sad expression appeared on her face. He didn't give me a goodbye kiss on the cheek. Whenever Belle went to the dungeon, she would give him a kiss and leave, but this time she didn't, and that really depressed her. Oh, whispered Misha, seeing how quickly her friend's spirits had fallen, feeling sorry for her. She looked so happy, she thought sadly. Although he quickly shook his head, dismissing those silly thoughts. It's obvious he's happy, finally there's a new member in his family, I should be happy for him, he thought, crossing his arms. Belle always wanted more companions and he finally has them. Perhaps happiness made him forget to give her a goodbye kiss. Forgetting once wasn't going to be the end of the world. She was starting to feel like a fool for getting depressed over something so stupid. She wasn't a child to behave like that. The silly fool is embarrassed to be called captain, he thought, remembering Belle's embarrassed expression upon hearing those words. And again a pain appeared in her heart when she remembered that, she couldn't help it, those feelings appeared without her realizing it. This is annoying, I thought, wanting to ignore it. Her mother told her that she had felt similar things when her father hung out with other women, even if it was in a friendly way, and even if she wanted to, she could never control those feelings. And now the same thing was happening to her. Congratulations, Rose, you've just discovered the feeling of jealousy, Misha said mockingly. You're practically begging me to hit you again, he threatened, raising his fist. I'm not the threat, my little Rose. The threat is out there with your boyfriend. Be careful, he warned, narrowing his eyes. Belle is loyal to me, there's no reason to distrust him, she said, crossing her arms. It could be, but even if he's faithful to you, that girl could steal his attention, even in a friendly way, and you'll end up taking a backseat. Have you seen those stories where the girlfriend gets jealous because her boyfriend's childhood friend steals all his attention? Well, that's what I mean. Before Misha could continue speaking, Ina covered her mouth, confusing her. Leave her alone, Ina the elf pleaded, looking disapprovingly at Misha. You're affecting Rose. Confused, Misha turned her gaze towards Rose, who instead of having an angry expression, had a worried and sad one after the words she had said. Wait, Rose, I was just kidding. It's more than obvious that Belle loves you madly, you'll always be number one. He encouraged, giving her a thumbs up. Keep doing your job, she whispered, picking up her papers and walking to her desk to continue her work. Stupid, Ina scolded, giving Misha a light tap, who would later apologize to Rose for her comments. Meanwhile, Beastman simply sat in her seat and took one last look at the guild entrance before shaking her head slightly and continuing with her work. She was worrying about nothing, her boyfriend was happy, and she should be too, her family was growing after all. I'm sure that tomorrow everything will be the same, and he'll give me kisses as compensation for having forgotten them, she thought with an amused smile, knowing what Belle was like. And to think that before he didn't even want to talk to her when he was starting out as an adventurer, and now he would get sad when I didn't talk to him. That fool had definitely changed her, and for that very reason she loved him so much. We'll be celebrating 6 months of dating in a week, maybe I should prepare something special for him, perhaps a delicious dinner, I'm sure he'll like it, she thought with a happy smile. Ignoring the jealousy and sadness she felt at first, Rose continued with her work, hoping that nothing bad would happen to her boyfriend in the dungeon, and that they could have the moments together that she loved so much. It's a shame that things would be different with the arrival of that new girl to the family. The next day. Hey? It was the small sound that came out of Rose in surprise after what had happened. Once again, Belle had arrived at the guild with that girl Iris and her group of adventurers, ready to explore the dungeon. He excitedly told her how skilled the girl was at fighting, and she was embarrassed by the captain's praise. And after that conversation, he left the guild with his group to explore the dungeon, and again without even giving her a small kiss on the cheek. At this point, the pain in Rose's heart was much stronger than yesterday, and her jealousy was growing stronger. "That idiot," he whispered, his eye twitching. Those closest to the beastman moved away slightly because of the dark aura she was emanating. "So you're really happy to have that girl in the family, very nice, it seems you did inherit something from your perverted grandfather after all," he thought, frowning. She didn't want to seem jealous or possessive, but it was starting to bother her that her silly rabbit wasn't paying attention to her anymore. She needed a rabbit to hug. "If it bothers you so much, then tell him to spend time with you," Ina advised with a nervous smile. "Of course not, I have my pride. If that idiot wants to push me aside, then I'll push him aside too," she refused, crossing her arms. "He'll have to work hard if he wants me to forgive him for this. I'll fight fire with fire." I didn't know you were so resentful," Misha commented, surprised. "Come on Rose, just tell him how you feel and you'll sort this out. Belkun doesn't realize what he's doing, so he probably isn't doing it on purpose," Ina pleaded, not wanting the cute couple to argue. "I refuse. You're wasting your time, Ina. Beastmen are very proud," Misha said with a grin. "Don't you have work to do?" Rose asked, glaring at her two companions, who decided to back away to avoid any blows, especially Misha, who was the most likely to receive one. After that, Rose continued doing her job in a bad mood because of her boyfriend's behavior. "Stupid Belle," she whispered jealously because that girl was stealing her rabbit's attention. "I hope this ends tomorrow, or I'll get even angrier with you." Unfortunately for her, the next day was the same, and the day after that too, and the one after that and on and on. Until a whole week passed in which Belle only hung out with that girl and her group to do explorations. Every day was the same, Belle would arrive at the guild with Iris and proudly tell Rose about the great work the girl was doing in the dungeon, saying that perhaps she would do a great job as captain, and so on, and although Rose wanted to ignore him, she always ended up listening attentively to his conversations. And of course, he left the guild with that girl without giving her a goodbye kiss. He no longer visited her at home, nor did he invite her out like in the past. That only meant one thing. His rabbit had been stolen and that was bad news for his coworkers. "Misha." The elf Royman approached the pink-haired girl who was calmly doing her job. "What's up, fatty?" Misha asked, bored. I mean, be boss," the frightened girl corrected. Royman just sighed, knowing how absent-minded the girl was. "I want you to go and drop off some files at the Ganesha family headquarters. There are a lot of papers, so you and Rose will go." "No." Misha screamed in terror upon hearing her friend's name. "Anyone but her," she pleaded desperately. "Why?" he asked, puzzled. "Just look at her." Misha pointed to a certain part of the guild where Rose was at her desk with a dark aura around her and an angry expression. Even when she typed very hard, the table cracked a little, scaring those closest to her. "If I get near Rose, she'll kill me," she screamed in fear. "I don't care, she's another guild employee so she has to do her job, so you two go and deliver those files to the Ganesha family." And with that order, Royman left, leaving the devastated Misha with no option but the path of death. I still haven't gotten my trio. I can't die like this," she whispered with small tears in her eyes, seeing 4 men in black with a coffin on their shoulders, waiting for her at the entrance of the guild. Then he turned his gaze to the beastman who broke his pencil in two with the force he exerted, angrily throwing the broken pencil into a mountain of pencils that suffered the same fate, before taking another one and continuing to write. "Anyone who's afraid of dying shouldn't be born," Misha said, offering words of encouragement and a small prayer for her soul, as she began walking toward her friend, hoping everything would turn out alright. "Stupid Belle, this is your fault for not paying attention to your girlfriend." After almost half an hour walking towards Rose, she was 6 meters away but walked so slowly that it took her half an hour, she finally reached her destination, feeling like Rose's evil aura wanted to eat her alive. Rose. What do you want?" he asked, glaring at the pink-haired girl who took a few steps back. Royman's fat blob told us to drop off some files for the Ganesha family," she stammered, feeling intimidated by her friend for the first time. Rose remained silent, staring intently at Misha, who was waiting for her to start tearing off her arms and legs. Fortunately for her, Rose sighed and stood up. "Okay, we have to go," he agreed without complaining, since it was his job. A huge relief appeared in Misha's heart when she realized she hadn't been killed and had another day of life. "See, come on, there are the files we'll be taking," she said, still a little scared, walking while Rose followed her from behind, still frowning. Perhaps that walk relaxed her a little. Some time later. For Misha, the walk to the Ganesha family was by far the most awkward he had with Rose. The she-wolf said nothing the whole way, only having that angry expression, and that remained until arriving at said headquarters to give the reports. Now that their work was done, they could return to the guild and continue what they had left behind. Or that was the idea. "Rose? What do you want?" "Look." When Rose saw that her friend was pointing in a specific direction on the street, she saw that same place again. And what she saw surprised her. In front of her, a few meters away, was Belle along with Iris in civilian clothes, chatting with a smile, and each with a Jack American in their mouth as they walked down the street. In the eyes of many and of herself it looked like a date, Misha whispered. And once again a sharp pain appeared in Rose's heart upon hearing those words, clenching her fists. Yesterday Belle told him that he wouldn't go to the dungeon because it would be busy. And now he understood that the commitment he had was to have a date with his lovely companion. It had to be today, the day they celebrated 6 months of dating. Well, see, they can be out shopping for food. Do you remember they live in the same place?" Misha said with a nervous smile, wanting to cheer Rose up. But he froze completely when he saw tears forming in Rose's eyes, which she was doing her best to prevent from falling down her cheeks. The only time he saw Rose so devastated was when Belle didn't return from the dungeon after facing that minotaur, and now she was like this again. "Rose? Did he get bored of me?" he whispered, clenching his fists. She didn't want to believe it, but that week Belle had been acting distant with her. She thought he was doing it without knowing why, but in the last few days she realized he was doing it on purpose. And that was hurting him. "That's enough," Misha whispered angrily as she walked toward the couple. "I'm going to put that rabbit in his place. Who does he think he is, making my friend cry?" And with a firm step, Misha walked towards Belle, who was happily observing a small box, while thanking Iris for helping him. "Hey you." Belle was startled by Misha's sudden scream and turned around. "Misha-san. You wretched rabbit. How dare you push my friend aside?" she yelled, grabbing Belle by the collar. "I never expected you to be that kind of person." Wait, Misha-san, I don't know what you mean," Belle said, confused. "You know what I'm talking about. You made Rose cry." "Rose? Is Rose crying?" she asked worriedly upon hearing her beloved's name. "Yes, and it's your fault." Meanwhile, Iris just nervously watched the interaction between the two, not knowing what to do. Rose, Belle thought worriedly, searching for the beastman with his eyes, until he managed to see her in the distance with her head down, bringing her hands to her eyes, as if she were drying something. That confirmed to him that Misha's words were true. She quickly freed herself from Misha's grip without harming her and ran towards the red-haired woman, hoping she was alright. Meanwhile, Misha glared at Iris, who became even more frightened. "Belle belongs to Rose, got it?" "Why yes, I know that," whispered the girl, puzzled. Belle quickly reached his reed and gently took her by the shoulders, looking at her with concern. "Rose, what happened?" he asked, agitated, checking if she had any injuries or anything. "As if you didn't know, you idiot," the girl whispered without looking up. What did I do now?" he asked, hurt by the sudden insult. When Rose saw that Belle wouldn't leave until she answered him, she grabbed his arm and dragged him into an alley for more privacy. "I wasn't going to argue in the middle of the street with so many people around." Meanwhile, Belle simply let himself be guided by the beastman, wanting to know the reason why she was sad. If anyone had hurt her, he swore he would awaken all the demons of hell to make whoever had harmed his beloved pay. Upon reaching the alley, Rose let go of his hand and turned her back on him. Why? That? Why are you pushing me aside?" I asked, turning around to see Belle with a sad expression. Did you get bored of me?" "What? Of course not," he shouted, alarmed. "You are the woman I love most. So why do you prefer spending your time with that Iris girl? This past week all you've done is talk about her over and over again," she said, looking down. "It seems she's more important to you." "Rose, are you jealous?" he asked in surprise. "Obviously an idiot. My boyfriend spends all day with another woman and doesn't even pay attention to me. And you still ask if I'm jealous?" I yelled, tempted to punch Belle, one of those punches he always used to give Misha. Wait, calm down," he pleaded, frightened by the evil aura surrounding his girlfriend. "Why, Belle? Did I do something wrong?" she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. Now Belle was even more confused. Rose went from being sad to being angry to being sad again. His mood swings were not normal. So the best way Belle could think of to calm her down was by taking her by the shoulders to pull her closer to him and giving her a soft kiss, which took the girl by surprise. She tried to pull away to show him she wouldn't forgive him so easily, but she couldn't. Kissing him after so long filled her heart with warmth. He's an idiot and yet I love him, thought the beastman, closing her eyes to enjoy the kiss. After kissing for about 30 seconds, Belle slowly pulled away, seeing Rose's embarrassed expression. Are you calm now? I asked, smiling. Shut up, idiot, he whispered, letting his face fall onto the albino's chest. I still haven't forgiven you for leaving me behind. I'm sorry if I didn't pay attention to you this week, but I didn't because I don't love you. So there really is a reason for it, he said, pinching Belle's shoulder. It had better be for a good reason, or I'll be really mad at you. I wanted to give you your space, he confessed, looking down. I realized I was always passing by you, and Kami-sama told me that's good, but she also recommended giving you your space from time to time, that women needed, so I decided to listen to her. Besides, I'm kind of attached to you, and I thought maybe you'd get bored of me or something. The instant he finished saying those words, he received a powerful blow to the head which hurt him. Huh? I'm level 4. How can he hit so hard? Belle wondered in shock as he felt the pain in his head. Idiot. I'll never get bored of you. That's why I chose you as my life partner, so you'd always be by my side, she said angrily. And on top of that, you decide to spend your free time with another woman. You're a cheating rabbit. Wait. There's nothing between Iris-san and me, he said desperately before she could get the wrong idea. Iris-san is new to the family. I had to teach her everything about the dungeon. And why are you so happy to be with her? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, she always says I'm a great captain, I can't help but feel happy about it, he replied with an embarrassed smile. Iris-san says she feels ready to travel to the dungeon alone or with one of our other comrades, so you could say my classes are over. I'll just continue training her at headquarters with the sword, nothing more. Rose just looked away in embarrassment when she realized she had misinterpreted everything. She felt like a fool. And what about the nights? You used to visit me all the time, but you stopped showing up this week, she asked curiously. That's because I've been working as a waiter in a bar, he explained, surprising her. As a waiter? Why? I wanted to buy something. The money I earn in the dungeon isn't enough since we split it among the whole group and cover household expenses, so I had to find another way to earn extra money. That's how I was able to gather the money quickly, he said with an embarrassed smile. I wasn't on a date with Iris-san. She came with me to help me choose the item I wanted to buy. And what did you want to buy? Well. With an embarrassed smile, Belle took out a very pretty little box, which surprised Rose, who didn't believe that was about to happen. You see, Rose, he whispered, opening the small box and revealing a ring. Yes, I want to. I exclaimed, not letting Belle finish speaking. The happiness that overflowed in her heart made her say those words instantly. What do you want? He asked, puzzled. Marry you? Rose said, confused. Weren't you going to ask me to marry you? Hey. And no, this ring is a gift for our anniversary, Belle explained shyly. I would never propose to you in an alley. Rose blushed deeply again, embarrassed at having misunderstood things. So she simply dropped her face onto the albino's chest to hide her embarrassment. Well, at least you already know my answer when you ask me to marry you, she whispered, embarrassed. Belle chuckled nervously, giving her a gentle hug. Don't be sad again, Rose. You know I love you. I'm sorry for pushing you away. And forgive me for misunderstanding things, she whispered, relieved that it had all been a mistake. Don't be afraid to kiss me at the Gilder in public. You have no idea how happy it makes me every time you do. Then get ready, because I'm going to show you all the love I feel for you, he said, kissing her cheek, which made her giggle. Come on, Misha's probably waiting for you outside. I'd love to go on a date with you, but I have to get back to work, Rose said dejectedly. Don't worry, tonight we can go to dinner anywhere you want, it will be like an apology for what happened this week. That's perfect, she said, happily hugging Belle's arm. Although I have a doubt. Before they left the alley, Belle stopped, saying those words. What's going on? I asked, confused. You're usually so calm and composed, but today you seemed bipolar. It's strange to see you cry and then get angry instantly, he said, puzzled. Do you suffer from bipolar disorder? I'm not bipolar, she replied, shaking her head slightly. My mother told me that when a beastman is pregnant, her mood tends to change constantly, even if she's only a few weeks along, so I guess that's why. I'll try to control my mood swings a bit. I see, that makes sense. What? Belle's expression changed to one of total shock as he processed those words. That means I stammered, unable to believe it. Yes, she whispered with a small smile, placing her hand on her belly. 2 days ago I went to Ermid and she said I'm 2 weeks pregnant, although she can't confirm if it's a boy or a girl yet. We'll have to wait longer." And the instant she finished saying that, Belle lifted her up a little and planted a loving kiss on her lips. I think that confirmed to him that Belle was happy about it. I didn't worry about anything, she thought, feeling a great happiness in her heart. After the kiss, Belle slowly lowered her and looked at her with a big smile. "I'm going to be a dad." "Yes, silly, we'll be parents," she said with a small smile. "Dad, I'm going to be a dad," he whispered, unable to believe it, running into the street, confusing Rose. "I'm going to be a dad." The people walking down the street just stared in confusion and surprise at the rabbit that suddenly shouted those words. "Hey idiot, don't say it so loud," Rose pleaded, embarrassed, running towards the albino to cover his mouth. But it was too late. People had already heard those words. Soon the news that one of Aario's most promising adventurers and one of the guild's most beautiful and popular advisors were going to be parents would spread throughout the city. Meanwhile, 2 girls nearby listened in shock to what Belle had just shouted. "Is the captain going to be a father?" Iris whispered, full of surprise. "Grandma," Misha whispered. "I'm going to be a grandma." Huh? Although Iris's surprise turned to confusion at Misha's words. Rose just slapped herself in the face at the stupid things her friend was saying, although she smiled afterwards. "I love you, Belle," she thought, looking at her boyfriend who couldn't stop smiling at the news he'd received. "Although I apologize in advance for all the mood swings I'll have from now on," she said with a nervous smile. Soon there would be 2 little girls in the lives of the 2 lovers, with new adventures as parents waiting for them. And Serenade, Belks Makoto. It was night in the city of Aario, a very quiet night. There was no noise, only the sound of nocturnal animals. It seemed like it would be just another night in that city. But the catastrophe was about to arrive. Poor people were walking slowly through those streets. One thing they had in common was that all 4 were dressed in tuxedos, very elegant despite there not being a party in the vicinity. They were Belle, who was carrying a guitar. Welf, who was carrying a trumpet. Rawl, who was also carrying a guitar. And Bet, who was carrying only a bouquet of roses and had a determined expression. "I still think this is a bad idea," Welf whispered, watching the fertility hostess in the distance. "I agree," said the nervous Rawl. "You're all cowards. That's why you don't have girlfriends, because you don't take risks. Learn from the rabbit," Bet scolded, adjusting his tie. "In fact, Makoto wouldn't let me sing," Belle said with a nervous smile. "Despite our best efforts with the song, it couldn't be released, what a shame," said the blacksmith, discouraged. "It doesn't matter if the rabbit didn't succeed with his song. I will succeed," Bet shouted excitedly. "But Bet-san, we're talking about Mia," whispered the frightened Rawl. "Huh? Do you have a problem with my little one?" I asked, glaring at Rawl, who backed away in fear. "But you're right, I highly doubt she'd like this kind of thing, she could break your spine, or rather, she's going to break our spines," Welf explained nervously. "Imagining Mia breaking my spine excites me." Belle, Welf and Rawl had an anime-style sweat drop when they heard what the wolf said. It reminds me of when I drank that love potion, but it wasn't that intense," Belle thought, touching his chin with a finger. "I highly doubt Bet drank one, although it's strange that he fell in love with Mia-san overnight." "I'm already regretting coming here," Rawl said, frightened as he stood almost in front of the fertility hostess. "They can leave if they want, but I won't. A real man fights to win his beloved's heart. He never backs down." The 3 were surprised by the wolf's words, and for some reason, that gave them the courage to stay with him and serenade the smallest dwarf of all. They would help him achieve his goal. "Well, here we are," whispered Belle, now standing in front of the bar with everyone else. The place was dark, a sign that it had closed, and the surrounding houses were too. The 4 of them were the only weirdos still awake. In fact, everything was very sudden for Belle and Welf. Out of nowhere, the wolf appeared at the entrance of their headquarters, dragging a frightened Rawl by the neck and telling them that he needed their help for something. These doubters approached the wolf to find out what he wanted, and great was their surprise to learn that he wanted to serenade Mia Grand. It was complete madness, but they agreed anyway, as they were curious to know how it would all end, just hoping that if the dwarf got angry, she wouldn't attack them too. "By the way, do you know how to sing, Bet?" Belle asked curiously, looking at the wolf who was staring at the bar with a lovesick idiot smile, probably imagining Mia. "If it's up to Mia, I sing better than anyone in this world," I whispered. Welf wanted to die laughing, but held it back because he knew the wolf would punch him in the face if he did. "I still think it's a bad idea," Rawl said again, thinking that if Mia was asleep she would be quite angry. "Well, it's too late to run away now," said Welf, preparing to play the trumpet. "They're ready," Bet shouted, standing in front of the bar and looking up at the windows. "Wait. How do you play the guitar?" Rawl asked nervously. Just play it and let God's will be done, Bell replied, preparing to do one of the craziest things of his life. Well, let's do it. I dedicate this song to you, my beloved. Bell, Welf and Rawl began to play their instruments somewhat nervously, hoping that everything would go well. Then Bet smiled, preparing to sing the best songs for his beloved. Beautiful love. Beautiful love. That God has sent me. To be destined just for me. Ugh, he sings horribly, Welf thought as he listened to the wolf's voice. Even his grandmother sang better. Well, it was more than obvious, thought Rawl, looking around nervously, hoping no one would come out angry because of the noise. What a beautiful gift. What a beautiful gift. It has come from heaven. And it has filled me with joy and love. Bet is putting all his feelings into this song, it's incredible, Bell thought, admiring the wolf who, despite singing badly, sang with great feeling. Beautiful darling. Beautiful darling. I'm like a child again. With a new toy, happy and content. So time passed with that song until Bet finished singing, much to the relief of Welf and Rawl. And Mia didn't appear at any point. All I could hear were the dogs barking in the distance. It seems he didn't come out, Welf whispered, feigning surprise. Maybe she's not home, Rawl said, wanting to leave. Wait, I know women like her, they play hard to get, but inside they want to go out and listen to the beautiful songs, said Bet, who far from being disappointed, was very motivated to get Mia to look out the window. Yes, beautiful songs, Welf thought sarcastically. I think it needs a more romantic song. Don't give up. Exclaimed Bell, who was now more motivated. You're right, Rabbit, this is just the beginning. Bet, now more motivated, stepped forward, ready to sing another song, the second of many. While Welf glared at Bell for giving more motivation to the wolf's madness, Bell just smiled nervously. What are you waiting for? Knock. Bet ordered. And these, having no other option, began to play their instruments again. With you I learned. That new and better emotions exist. With you I learned. To know a new world of dreams. Welf wanted to cover his ears because of such a bad voice, but he had no choice but to endure that torment. I learned. That the week has more than 7 days. To make my few joys greater. And to be happy, I learned it with you. In the distance, a man could be heard complaining about the noise in a house, but Bet didn't care and continued singing with great feeling. With you I learned. To see the light on the other side of the moon. With you I learned. That I wouldn't trade your presence for anything. And the singing went on, to the torment of the ears of his companions. And after a few minutes the second song also ended. And as was obvious, Mia didn't come out. The only thing that could be heard was the crying of a baby a few houses away, and it was obvious after hearing Bet's voice. That's strange, she still hasn't come out, the wolf whispered, puzzled, since he thought Mia would come out with that second song. And she should have come out. Pretty strange, isn't it? The blacksmith said again sarcastically. I wouldn't be surprised if the Ganesha family arrived any minute now because of the noise we're making, said Rawl, looking around to see if anyone appeared complaining. Maybe Mia doesn't like serenades, Bet whispered, a little discouraged, thinking of giving it up, while Welf and Rawl's eyes shone with hope. Don't give up, Bet. I'm sure he'll come out sooner or later, you just have to let him know how you feel, Bell exclaimed again, encouraging the wolf. He abandoned his discouraged expression for one full of determination upon hearing the albino's words. You're right, Rabbit. I can't give up here. Mia won't love me if I give up so easily. I have to try harder. Welf and Rawl turned to look at Bell with a blank face, and he nervously looked away, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't let a comrade in love give up so easily. Great. Then let's keep singing. We won't leave until my beloved comes out. Ah, well, Welf sighed wearily and began to play his instrument along with Rawl and Bell, who wished the wolf all the best in achieving his goal. My beautiful Mia. I will dedicate as many songs to you as necessary. The serenade night was going to be a long one. Half an hour later. I'm getting tired of this, Welf thought with a grumpy expression. Not only did he have to stand there and play his instrument, but he also had to listen to Bet's horrible voice as he continued singing. And, as was obvious, the dwarf didn't appear. I'm sleepy, Rawl whispered, feeling his eyes grow heavy. And it would all have ended if it weren't for Bell, who kept encouraging him not to give up. If things continued like this, they would be there until dawn. She still hasn't come out, Bet whispered, disappointed, clutching the bouquet of roses as he realized his love plan had failed. That's too bad, we should leave then. I think that would be best. You can't give up, Bet. You have to put more feeling into it. Shut up already. In a fit of anger, Welf snatched a guitar from Bell and smashed it over his head, leaving him somewhat stunned. Give me that. Then I walk towards Rawl and take his guitar and walk forward. Now it's my turn to sing, he said grumpily, adjusting his guitar. Do you like my little dwarf? Bet asked, her gaze darkening. Of course not, but with this song, you're going to get out, no matter what, she said, looking up at the second floor. You're going to get out, I know you're going to get out. Belle and Raoul just stared at Welf, confused, wondering what he was going to sing. And Bet just crossed his arms, frowning, looking at the reed. And seconds later the sound of the guitar began to be heard loudly. You could hear his anger in the sound. And she started to sing, and the lyrics were something no one expected. I don't care if you don't listen to me. Because it's already known that you made a mistake. Belle and Raoul's faces went blank when they heard the lyrics of the song, and Bet just raised an eyebrow. I don't care if you're rude to me. I don't get any crap anymore. The same face turned to one of terror upon hearing what he was saying. Welf. Are you crazy? Belle shouted, agitated, and Raoul was about to run away. Wait. I think he's coming out, Bet whispered, hearing noises inside. I don't care if you won't open the window. I'd rather you throw your sister at me. And with that said, the front door was thrown open, and out came an enraged Mia with a huge sledgehammer in her hands. He's out. Bet exclaimed. Let you sleep, you bastards. In anger, Mia raised her mallet and directed it with great force towards Welf, who knew he had screwed up. Like a projectile, it flew away, much to the terror of Belle and Raoul. Welf. Mia. My beloved Mia. My songs have finally reached you. Bet cried, kneeling before the dwarf and extending the bouquet of roses. Mia, will you be my? Bet couldn't finish the question because the dwarf grabbed him by the hair and slammed him with enormous force into the ground, creating a huge crater. Belle and Raoul didn't think twice and started to flee the place, not wanting to have that same fate, panic setting in for them. But Mia wouldn't let them get away just like that. Out of nowhere, a rope fell from the sky, tying Raoul up. Abiel. And just as quickly as it arrived, the rope was gone along with the boy, who fell far away, causing an explosion. The fear and panic only grew in Belle, who ran as fast as he could towards his headquarters and went into the arms of his beloved Makoto to feel safe. But I can't do it. He screamed in terror when the dwarf was just inches away with her enormous hand extended towards him. And a powerful crash was heard in that street, accompanied by a groan of pain and the sound of bones being broken. People didn't even go out to see what was happening. All they were grateful for was that those horrible chants had finally ended. My beloved Mia, the wolf spoke in a delirious state, watching as she approached him with an expression full of anger. Bad and his companion's serenade to the dwarf at the bar was a complete failure. End. Holidays, Belks Astria. Tick-tack. Tick-tack. The sound of the clock on the wall was the only thing that could be heard in the Astria family headquarters room. The civilized girls were gathered in the living room, all sitting on different sofas except for Kagaya, who had gone to the kitchen for something to drink. Normally the room was always full of noise from the gossip, jokes and other things they threw at each other, but not this time. Everything was completely silent, they were just looking at each other with serious expressions. The silence was so profound that, in addition to the ticking of the clock, one could also hear the faint sound of Kagaya from the kitchen, which was 2 doors away from the living room. A week. Finally, Allies broke the silence with those words. Her tone of voice was serious, which was unusual since she always sounded cheerful, but not this time. Upon hearing what their captain said, the girls nodded slightly with a frown. A week. Whispered all. And why did they say a week? Yes. It's been a week since Astria Sama left and she hasn't returned. Allies shouted dramatically to the 4 winds. They abandoned us. Iska shouted with tears in her eyes, throwing herself into Nisa's arms. Astria Sama got bored of us, Ryu whispered, her gaze distant. We embarrass him, Selti added, a depressed aura surrounding her. It's all Mariu's fault for saying that the last cookies I made weren't that delicious, Asta accused angrily. It's my fault. It's my fault. Mariu cried with tears in her eyes as Ryana comforted her. Exact. The reason they were all like that is because Astria left headquarters a week ago and hadn't returned. The last time she was seen was at the gates of the headquarters. She was carrying a backpack which was somewhat loaded. Before leaving, he turned to look at them with a warm smile and said. I'll be gone for a while, so don't worry. And with that said, the goddess left without giving them any further explanation. And since then a whole week had passed, a week without any news of her. She had abandoned them, that was the only explanation. They abandoned them like a dog. Well, Allies whispered, wiping away a tear. I guess I'll be the family's temporary goddess while we find another solution. Allies, Nice whispered, shaking her head slightly. Allies, update my status, Asta asked, approaching the reed. Allies Sama for you, he said, crossing his arms. Take this seriously, you 2 fools, Ryana scolded. Astria Sama disappeared and we don't know anything about her. I'm worried something bad might have happened to her. Well, we still have his Falna, Lyra remarked, trying to see the bright side. Maybe what he needs is a break from all of us. A break? But why? allies shouted indignantly. We're his perfect daughters, especially me, we don't cause him any problems that would warrant a break. Yes, a break is definitely what she needs, Lyra said, shaking her head slightly. Even so, I'm worried about not knowing anything about her, Nee said, looking down, somewhat distressed. It might be true that she's taken a break, but I'm afraid something bad might have happened to her, which is why she hasn't come back. Don't scare me, Nees, Noin whispered. If anything bad happens to Astria-sama, I'll kill myself. If only he hadn't said that about her cookies, Mariu said, wiping away her tears. It's okay, Mariu, it's not your fault, ignore Asta's words, Rihanna said, trying to comfort her. At that moment, Kagaya entered the room with a container of ice cream in her hands, which she was eating with a spoon. Hey. That's the ice cream I was saving. Mariu complained when she saw it in the Viper's hands. It was, he said as he threw himself onto a sofa and continued eating his ice cream. And what about you? Why the long faces? All the girls looked indignantly at Kagaya, seeing that she didn't care at all that their goddess wasn't present. You're a monster. Asta shouted, throwing a pillow that was on the sofa at him, which he dodged. How can you be so calm? Rihanna asked, disappointed. Astria-sama has disappeared and you don't care about anything. I know you liked her boyfriend, but celebrating his disappearance to be with him you've fallen too low, Noin said, shaking her head slightly as a vein popped out on the Asian woman's forehead. I don't like Bell. But you spend a lot of time with him in your free time, Iska whispered, her eyes narrowed. What? Can't a man and a woman be friends without romantic feelings involved? She asked irritably. Grow up, girls. That doesn't matter, Ally said, crossing her arms. Kagaya, as captain of this family, I am very disappointed in you. You all worry about nothing, Astria-sama is on vacation in Milan, she said simply, continuing to eat her ice cream. The girls remained silent with surprised expressions upon hearing those words. Milan? Ryu whispered. Is Astria-sama in Milan? Selti asked, tilting her head. Didn't you know? He said, raising an eyebrow. A strong twitch appeared in each of their eyes upon hearing what the Oriental woman said. All this time you knew where Astria-sama was and you didn't tell us anything? Rihanna asked, annoyed. You never asked me, she explained, shrugging her shoulders and continuing to eat her ice cream. We never asked you. Allies shouted, jumping to her feet. Kagaya, that's not something you hide. It was vital information. That's treason against the family. Asta exclaimed, pointing at her as if she were on trial. You're a viper. Mariu added, her eyes watering, as Rihanna had to hold her back from lunging at the ice cream. You're a rat, Kagaya. A fat rat. Selti shouted, joining in the complaints. Kagaya just rolled her eyes wearily, ignoring the insults and continuing to eat her ice cream. But Milan? Why did Astria-sama go to Milan? Nees asked, puzzled. Because I gave him the trip as a gift. Huh? What? Kagaya looked up at the ceiling, remembering what happened a week ago. Since they asked him, he would explain what had happened. You see what happened was. Flashback. 1 week ago. Congratulations. You won. These were the words that an excited Hermes said to Kagaya, who had a bored expression looking at the god. In front of her was a roulette wheel which she had spun a few seconds ago, and when it finished spinning, God said those words. And what am I supposed to win? The Asian woman asked with that same bored expression, wondering why she had agreed to play this game. What did you win? A smile of excitement spread across Hermes' face. You won an all-expenses-paid trip for two to the city of Milan. Woohoo. As she finished saying those words, Asfi appeared with a somewhat embarrassed expression while throwing confetti, which ended up in the bitter girl's hair. But Kagaya's expression did not change. She just kept that blank face staring at the god. What's wrong? Hermes asked. Give me money. Huh? I'm not interested in the trip, so give me money, he repeated in a lazy tone. No, 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 I can't do that, your prize is the trip, so you have to accept it, Hermes refused, crossing his arms. But I don't want that trip. Come on. It'll be fun, you can bring your boyfriend. Oh, that's right, Astria stole him from you. Hermes fell to his knees after receiving a powerful kick to the testicles from an angry Kagaya. For the 10th time, I don't like Belle, she whispered, her eyes sharp, before looking at Asfi. Give me the tickets. The humans simply gave them to her, and the Oriental woman turned around and walked away with a hostile aura surrounding her. Enjoy the journey, said the pain god before fainting, while Asfi shook her head in disappointment. With Kagaya. She was still walking with that grumpy expression, looking at the tickets in her hands. What am I supposed to do with this crap now? He thought wearily. She didn't want to leave Aario. It made her so tired. Those kinds of trips weren't for her, but she knew those tickets were valuable. After all, it was an all-expenses-paid trip to Milan, it wasn't just any old thing. What would I do with them? She could put them up for auction at headquarters to see which of her friends would bid the most money. She wasn't about to give them away for free. But while he was thinking of a solution, he could see his goddess Astria walking in the distance with her beautiful smile and a small basket in her hands. Apparently, she was doing the shopping. After seeing his goddess under his gaze to check the tickets, he had an idea. Last Christmas I didn't give him a present, in fact I didn't give anyone a present because I forgot the date. It will be a good present. She had already made her decision. She would give them to her goddess, who would most certainly be thrilled with the trip. Besides, it was more than obvious who she would take. Her cloying goddess wasn't going to miss the opportunity to spend time alone with her boyfriend, who was also her best friend. But the damned rabbit that his goddess indulged quite a bit. Yes, it will be a good gift. Kagaya approached Astria, who was calmly examining some fruit at a street stall. The goddess seemed delighted with something as simple as comparing which apple shone brightest in the sun. Astria-sama, Kagaya called in her usual flat voice. The goddess looked up and smiled sweetly upon seeing her daughter. "Oh, Kagaya, did you come to do some shopping too?" she asked in her sweet voice. "No, not at all," he replied immediately, handing her the tickets without further ado. "Here you go." Huh? Astria blinked in surprise, delicately picking up the papers. "What's this? An order from allies or Mariu?" "No, it's a trip for 2 to Milan, all expenses paid," she said, as if she were talking about a brick. "I thought you'd like it, so I'm giving it to you as a gift." Astria's eyes sparkled a little when she heard that. She had been to that place twice before and had loved it. A trip to Milan? Seriously? Kagaya nodded slightly, feeling somewhat happy inside upon seeing the happiness in her goddess's eyes. "Yeah. This is wonderful," exclaimed Astria, holding the tickets as if they were a treasure. "And where did you get them?" "I won it in a game," he replied, shrugging his shoulders. "But it's a trip to Milan. Don't you really want them?" "Nah, those kinds of trips aren't my thing," he said with boredom. "Besides, he can invite that idiot Belle if he wants." "Kagaya, don't call him that," Astria pleaded, not liking how she referred to her boyfriend. "And what do you want me to call him? Daddy?" Sorry, it was just a joke, don't look at me like that," she apologized, feeling intimidated by her goddess's gaze. Upon hearing that, Astria smiled happily again, looking at the tickets. "Kagaya, this is a wonderful gift. You have no idea how much I appreciate it, thank you so much, and I'll definitely invite Belle, I'm sure he'll be thrilled." "I'm glad to hear that, but don't spoil that fool too much," she said, rolling her eyes. Sorry, but when I see him, I just want to do everything to make him happy," she explained with an embarrassed smile. "Thanks for the trip, Kagaya." "You're welcome," he said, giving a thumbs up. End of flashback. And that's what happened, Kagaya finished, continuing to eat her ice cream. The room fell silent after Kagaya's words. All the girls blinked slowly, processing what they had just heard. "So Eyes murmured with a nervous smile and a twitch in her eye, Astria-sama didn't abandon us, nor is she kidnapped nor anything." "Aha," Kagaya replied, putting another spoonful of ice cream in her mouth. "And she's simply on a romantic vacation with Belle in Milan, because you gave her the tickets," Eyes continued, her voice trembling. "Sip. A vacation because he's been getting hot and heavy with Belle," Lyra chimed in. "Probably." An awkward silence filled the room. So awkward that the ticking of the clock felt like a hammer blow in everyone's ears. Suddenly Asta stood up abruptly, pointing angrily at Kagaya. "Yahoo! Because of you we've had a week full of anguish. A week of existential pain." Iska cried out through tears. "I thought Astria-sama had replaced us with another family." Selti added, her aura dark and her hands trembling. "I had already written my suicide note." Nguyen shouted, holding up a crumpled piece of paper. "And I finished all my emergency chocolate because of nerves." Mariu confessed, crying her eyes out. Kagaya raised an eyebrow and sighed in annoyance. "Exaggerated. Eat shit, Kagaya." Rihanna yelled, raising a pillow like a weapon. "How could you hide it, you heartless viper?" Kagaya was about to respond with her usual calm, but she didn't have time as a shower of cushions and shoes flew straight toward her. The Eastern woman nimbly dodged most of them, though one cushion hit her face directly, splattering ice cream on her nose. "Hey. My ice cream. It's mine," Mariu shouted. In the midst of the chaos, Knees sighed, putting a hand to his forehead. "Well, at least now we know that Astria-sama is alright." "Yes," Ryu said with a sigh of relief, though he continued to stare at the ceiling with a melancholic expression. "Although I wish he had left a note." "Perhaps she was counting on that stupid Kagaya not to explain," Lyra said, crossing her arms. "But what kind of goddess goes on vacation and doesn't tell us?" "The class that has a boyfriend," Eyes retorted indignantly. "And an adorable boyfriend at that. That woman forgets about us as soon as the rabbit appears." A romantic vacation," Iska whispered, smiling. "How lovely." Hey, handsome, now I know the reason why she went off alone with him, Lyra said mockingly. Huh? Why? Ryu asked innocently. Asta caught the elf's attention so that she would look at her. The moment Ryu turned to look at her, the dwarf made a vulgar gesture with her fingers, making the elf incredibly embarrassed as she understood the message. Enough. Yelled Kagaya, annoyed that Ryu annoying kept attacking her. And the battle would have continued if the door to the room hadn't been opened. I'm back. And the beautiful voice of their goddess was present. They all quickly turned to look at her, seeing that it was indeed their goddess, who looked different. She had a beautiful smile and looked so radiant, and her skin seemed so much smoother. And although the gods did not age, he seemed much younger than before. And she was also carrying many bags in her hands. Astria-sama. They all shouted in unison. They dropped what they were holding and rushed towards her like a stampede. The bags almost fell from the goddess's hands as she was surrounded by a swarm of weeping daughters who embraced her as if she had returned from war. We thought she had abandoned us. Allies cried through tears, squeezing her tightly. I had already resigned myself to dying alone and forgotten. Nguyen shouted. Sorry about the cookies, I didn't mean for her to leave forever. Mariu shouted, burying her face in Astria's chest. The goddess blinked several times, confused, as she carefully placed the bags on the ground. Huh? Abandoning them? What are you talking about? She asked sweetly. The girls looked at each other, some still crying. It was Allies who spoke, with a huge pout. She left without saying a word. And we spent a whole week thinking she left us because she didn't love us anymore. You just don't do that. Astria placed a hand on Allies' head and tenderly stroked her hair. Oh, my poor girls, I'm so sorry, I didn't think they would react like this. I told them I was only going away for a while. That's not enough. Asta shouted. A responsible goddess gives us a date, an exact return time, and at least 3 goodbye letters. Haha, sorry, my girls, she apologized tenderly for her daughter's concern. But I thought Kagaya had told you. Didn't she say anything? The girls turned to look with frowns at Kagaya, who was still sitting on the sofa. I forgot. Astria shook her head slightly, then smiled again a few seconds later. By the way, I brought you gifts from Milan. She said with a radiant smile, showing the bags. The eyes of all of them lit up when they heard the word gift, forgetting their initial sadness. They all quickly went to sit on the sofas to receive the gifts brought by their goddess, who also took a seat. By the way, where's Dad? Asta asked curiously, making Astria laugh at the way she called him. She's at her headquarters, probably resting from the long trip, she said with a slight blush, making everyone squint. Astria-sama, what did you do on that trip? Lyra asked. You'll say we didn't do it, she replied, cupping her cheeks in embarrassment. Oh, I'm ashamed just thinking about it. The girls' eyes widened in shock when they heard that. What? Nice whispered, a blush rising to her cheeks. What do you mean? Oh, I'm embarrassed just thinking about it. Allies shouted immediately, jumping up from the sofa. Explain yourself, Astria-sama. Explain yourself right now. Yes, confess everything. Asta shouted, standing up on his seat. Astria, her cheeks flushed, hid part of her face with one of her hands as she laughed softly. Well, let's just say we made the most of our time together, she replied, her voice trembling. That sounds suspicious. Rihanna shouted. La 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 la, I don't want to hear any more la 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 la. Ryu shouted, putting her hands to her ears, completely red-faced. Tell me the details. Lyra shouted maliciously, resting her elbow on the table and grinning like a demon. Don't tell anyone. Mariu shouted. The room descended into chaos, with shouting awkward questions, several people fighting amongst themselves, and in the midst of it all, Astria with the most flushed face they had ever seen. But deep down, feeling happy about such a wonderful trip. And all thanks to Kagaya. Meanwhile, at the Chimenia mansion. It was the heart-rending scream of Welf, who was in the albino's room. He was sitting in a chair facing the bed holding Belle's hand, who was lying on it. Belle's appearance was pitiful. He was pale, very thin, and it looked as if his soul was about to leave his body. Welf. Hang on, friend. Don't die. Shouted the Redeed with tears in his eyes. I gave everything I had, she barely whispered. But it wasn't enough. Old. And no more than 2 hours had passed when she would ask me, see, can we do it again? I knew it. I knew that trip was a bad idea. Haha, it was incredible, she whispered with a silly smile. Don't be stupid. You almost came back dead. And I would do it again, and what's more, I'm going to save up for another trip together and I'll be prepared so I don't disappoint her. Welf stared at him with his mouth open, somewhere between indignant and scared. Ready? Brother, if you go around like that again, the next thing I'll prepare is your coffin. He shouted, squeezing Belle's hand even tighter. Belle could barely laugh. Don't be dramatic, I'm alive, aren't I? I hair. Welf shouted. What the hell did that goddess do to you? Bell looked at the ceiling, his lips trembling between tiredness and a dreamy smile. It was like being in heaven, damn, the feeling his body I was heaven. Of course, and you almost ended up buried in the ground. Bell closed his eyes with a tired smile, sinking into the pillow as Welf continued shouting beside him. His thoughts, however, were far from the room, traveling once more to those golden shores, to the murmur of the waves, and to Astria's embrace that had irrevocably captured him. He had spent every drop of energy, every fiber of his being, but he had never felt so alive. Never before had a week seemed so short. And while exhaustion kept him on the verge of collapse, his heart burned with a simple and clear desire. Do it again. Yes, bellcranel had loved that vacation with every second of her soul. And deep in her heart she was already dreaming about the next ones. And the perfect gift, Akix Belksalisha. Tomorrow is the big day. Those were the words shouted by a certain cat from the Loki family in her room. That cat was Aki, who seemed much more lively than usual. Why? Well, tomorrow was her beloved boyfriend bellcranel's birthday, and she was very excited because she wanted to surprise him with the best gift. I had been so anxious that I didn't even know what to give him. There were so many things, but I didn't want it to be just anything. I wanted it to be the most special thing, something I would treasure a lot. It's going to be complicated, Aki whispered, somewhat frustrated, as she finished getting dressed. Now I was ready. That day she absolutely had to buy her boyfriend's gift. She didn't have any more time. I had to travel all over the city to find that perfect gift. Okay, I'm ready. Taking her purse and looking at herself in the mirror once more, the beautiful Aki left her room to carry out the mission of the day. And the moment she left her room, the door to the next room also opened at the same time. Looking to that side, he saw a beautiful elf with golden hair coming out while adjusting her hair. That elf was Alice. The moment their eyes met, Aki let out a long sigh. At times I forgot that she wasn't Bell's only girlfriend, that Alicia was also his girlfriend. Even though they had been dating for a few months, she forgot that she shared a boyfriend with the elf. Don't get her wrong, she didn't regret agreeing to share Bell with the elf, but sometimes she felt like things were turning into a competition between them to see who was the better girlfriend. Although deep down all they both wanted was for Bell to be happy, and thanks to the fact that they had been best friends for years, they were able to handle that three-way relationship. Tomorrow is the big day. Exclaimed Alicia with a beautiful smile, almost identical to Aki's just a few minutes ago. The cat narrowed her eyes with a resigned sigh. Yes, I know, he murmured, his tone a mixture of amusement and mild competition. Tomorrow it is. Alicia looked at her curiously. Are you going out today too? She asked, adjusting her dress and trying to look her best. I have to find the perfect gift for Bell. I'm not going to show up empty-handed. Alicia let out a laugh so typical of her that it made Aki tense up without being able to stop herself. It almost seemed as if she already had the perfect gift for Bell. What a coincidence. I was also planning to go out and look for your gift today, said the elf, moving her gaze from side to side. Aki looked at her with narrowed eyes. Coincidence or competition? Oh, come on, Aki, the elf replied, smiling sweetly. It's not all a competition. I just want to give her something that will make her happy. Exactly the same as me, Aki said, crossing her arms, her tail twitching slightly irritably. And you know how difficult it is when it comes to Bell. He likes everything you give him, but that just makes choosing even harder. Alicia nodded with an understanding smile. Yes, that's just how he is. Always grateful, even if it's for a scarf or a letter or a stone. For a few seconds, they were both silent. They recalled small scenes. Bell receiving a poorly decorated cake from Aki with a genuine smile, or accepting a badly made scarf from Alicia, as if it were the greatest treasure in the world. That boy had the power to make them feel unique, even by sharing it. Aki broke the silence with a sigh. It's going to be complicated, but I'm not going to give up. I have to think of something unique, he said, clenching his fist with determination. I just want to buy a ribbon, said Alice, blushing slightly. A ribbon? Have you got your present yet? Asked the curious cat. Something like that, the elf whispered her answer as she looked away, somewhat nervously. The cat found that action very strange, causing her to squint. It seemed as if her friend was planning something, but what? Even so, I wasn't in the mood to delve into that. I had to find that gift. Well, whatever happens, I'm not going to waste any time. See you later. She said, adjusting her bag and starting to walk towards the exit with that gleam of determination in her eyes. Alicia watched her leave while still smiling somewhat sadly. Yes, a gift, she whispered, thinking about what kind of ribbon would be suitable for her gift. And with those thoughts, the elf also left the headquarters to fulfill her objective. With Aki. The hustle and bustle of Aario filled the streets as usual. Merchants called out their wares, adventurers strolled about, and civilians did their shopping or simply enjoyed the day. Among all those people was Aki, who was walking between the stalls with a concentrated expression, looking all around. She had to put all her effort into finding the perfect gift for her boyfriend. Her boyfriend. It was nostalgic even to remember him, to remember everything I had experienced with him up until now. When he first saw him that day in the dungeon and was about to be massacred by monsters. Fortunately, she was nearby and was able to save him, thus beginning their love story. Unfortunately, Alicia also got involved in that love story. She was supposed to be the only protagonist. How did she end up like this? Anyway, after having so many adventures together, the three of them exploring the dungeon, the battle with the Apollo family, the argument with Alice's suitor, the final battle with Lyle, and finally, that confession on the wall where they practically both convinced the albino to go out with both of them. He was still surprised that he had accepted something like that. He never imagined that he would share his partner with someone else, much less with Alicia, but there he was. Competing with her to see who could give her a better gift, or at least that's how the cat saw it. "It has been a long time," whispered the cat with a nostalgic smile. "But enough about memories, I had to find that gift today. What would be the perfect gift for him?" She thought, with a finger on her chin, looking at each stall she passed. Yes, Belle would accept anything I gave him, and that's what made it difficult, very difficult. A sword? No, not a sword. Belle doesn't need one. Clothes either, God Maich will probably give him those a story about heroes. But which one? I think he's already read them all. Perfume? No, I love his scent just the way it is. Damn it. Every object I saw seemed inadequate. None of them felt right. Why was it so difficult to give a gift to someone who would settle for anything? Aki walked for hours among the stalls, shops, and alleyways of Aario. The sun was already beginning to dip below the rooftops, painting the streets gold, and still nothing. Nothing seemed special enough. Ugh, the cat growled, letting her head fall onto a railing. This is a disaster. Alicia probably already had the perfect gift. She looked very calm in the morning, unlike her. As an elf, she was a perfect stalker, so she probably already knew even his most hidden tastes. On the other hand, she, who was a sweet saint, didn't pry much into her boyfriend's life, and now she regretted it. Maybe I should buy him a few shirts, I don't think he'll complain, she whispered in frustration. But it's annoying that I can't think of anything good. What if you give her some condoms and use them for the first time that day? I don't know, I want something that will last a lifetime, not something that'll be used in that moment. Aki's face turned red as she processed those words, quickly turning around to see who had said them. Lyle, damn it. What are you doing here? Yes, there she was, that sensual black-haired she-wolf, calmly eating a candy bar. Buying Belle's gift, said the wolf girl, holding up the bag. So? What do you think of the condos? No. Dirty, disgusting. She shouted nervously and ashamedly. I'm not giving that to Belle. I look like a pervert. But you are, she laughed mockingly, watching a vein form on the cat's forehead. It would always be fun to tease her. You're such an idiot. Aki exclaimed, crossing her arms and looking away, her face completely red. I just want to give her something nice, not something so indecent. Lyle burst out laughing, enjoying every second of the cat's reaction. Relax, I was just kidding, you kind of look like an elf, she said, laughing as she finished her candy bar and threw the wrapper in a basket. But seriously, you should think of something that will remind him how much you love him. Aki looked at her suspiciously. And you're going to give me advice now? Since when are you an expert on romantic gifts? I don't need to be an expert to give good gifts, Lyle replied with a calm smile, something unusual for her. Sometimes what matters most is something you made yourself, something you didn't put too much thought into. Made by me, Aki repeated in a low, thoughtful voice. Exactly, Lyle said, leaning against the railing beside her. Remember that Belle always values things with meaning behind them. A letter, a memory, a promise, a night of passion, simple things that come from the heart. Aki remained silent, her ears twitching slightly as she pondered those words. You might be right, she finally whispered. Although I don't like to admit that a she-wolf like you has a good idea. I know, I'm amazing, Lyle replied with his typical smug smile. Don't abuse it, she whispered, clicking her tongue. Aki would never get along with Lyle, she didn't like him at all, much less that he lived under the same roof as her boyfriend, she didn't trust him. Lyle began to walk away, calmly waving a hand. Well, I'll leave you to your romantic thoughts. I still have to wrap my own present. Did you buy anything for Belle too? Aki asked, raising an eyebrow suspiciously. Of course, after all, we're family now, said the she-wolf, turning slightly to show her the bag she was carrying. But don't worry, she's no competition with you. You'd be better off worrying about that elf. She probably has some shady plans out there. And with that said, the she-wolf left while her tail wagged from side to side. Aki sighed heavily as she watched her leave. "That she-wolf always stresses me out," he muttered as he looked down at the ground. Even so, although she didn't like it, Lyle's words echoed in her mind. Something made by oneself. What could it be? She whispered, bringing a finger to her chin. The idea began to take shape in his head, which had already been almost completely burned out during the course of the day. Slowly her expression changed, her ears perked up, her tail wagged excitedly from side to side, and a small smile appeared on her face. "That's it," she whispered, snapping her fingers. "I know what I'm going to give her." Her eyes shone with determination as she finally had a clear idea. Without wasting a second, she began to run through the crowd with a new energy that made her move faster than ever before. "Get ready, Belle. Your favorite cat is going to give you the best gift of all," she exclaimed as she disappeared into the crowd, motivated to make the boy she loved so much smile. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Alicia was looking at several ribbons in a small accessories shop. Her face was completely red as she held them one by one, weighing up which was the perfect ribbon for her gift. Maybe red is too daring, but white is too innocent. Ah, how embarrassing," she muttered, covering her face with both hands, not knowing which ribbon to choose. The owner, an elderly woman with a kind smile, watched her with some amusement. "It's a gift for your boyfriend, right?" What? Well, yes, it's for my boyfriend," stammered the nervous elf with her pointy red ears. "Ah, youth always so adorable," the old woman laughed as she showed her another ribbon with a small gold detail. "This one matches your eyes. I'm sure he'll love it." Alicia looked at it and analyzed every detail. It was nice, but it wasn't enough. "This ribbon is too small, it won't cover my body." That. Yes, Belle's birthday would definitely be a very special day. The next day. At the Maich family headquarters that formerly belonged to Apollo. "Happy birthday." Maich and Naza screamed as they threw confetti the moment the albino entered the room. The rabbit watched in surprise as his god stood before him, patting him on the shoulders with a happy smile. Behind God was Naza, the girl he considered his sister, who smiled warmly at him. Lyle was sitting on a sofa and she simply smiled at him and gave him a thumbs up. And finally there was his girlfriend Aki, who smiled affectionately as she quickly went to give him a hug. And that was it, they were all there. Alicia was not at the party they had prepared. "Happy birthday, Belle," Aki whispered, giving him a shy kiss on the lips. "Aki, thank you," Belle whispered, smiling sheepishly. Belle returned Aki's hug with that warmth of his that could melt anyone. His face flushed slightly as he received the kiss, which made the cat smile from ear to ear, her tail wagging happily. "Okay, don't get all lovey-dovey in the middle of the room," Naza said, somewhat annoyed, although her smile betrayed that she was happy for both of them. Aki laughed softly and moved away slightly from Belle, though without letting go of his hand. "I'm sorry, Naza. I just can't help it, it's her birthday," he replied with a smile. "So can I indulge him and give kisses too?" Naza asked, tilting her head. "No, not you." Belle let out a small, somewhat embarrassed laugh. "Hey, thanks everyone for this, I wasn't expecting it. Thank you so much, really." "Don't thank us," exclaimed Maich with a cheerful smile, patting him on the back. "You're very important to all of us. Besides, you're the pretty face of the pharmacy. Thanks to you, we have so many customers." Naza added, crossing her arms proudly while Aki frowned. "I prepared something special for you, so you'd better eat until you can't move." Belle smiled broadly. "I'm sure it will be delicious." "Thank you, Naza." "Oh, you little fool, come here." Naza approached Belle, kissed him on the cheek, and hugged him, all in front of Aki, who clicked her tongue in annoyance. While everyone was laughing and the atmosphere was filled with warmth, Belle looked around curiously the moment he broke away from the hug with Naza, noticing the absence of a particular person who was also very special to him. "Hey," he said suddenly, looking at Aki. "And Alicia." Aki blinked, momentarily concealing her surprise. "Alicia?" he repeated, trying to sound casual as his tail wagged nervously. "Well, I saw her this morning. I think she was doing some things on her own. She didn't say much to me." Belle lowered his gaze slightly, a mixture of disappointment and understanding reflected in his expression. "I see, maybe he had something important to do." "It's okay," she said with a gentle smile, though her eyes showed a hint of sadness. She really wanted to have all the people she loved most present on that important day of her life. Aki watched him silently for a few seconds. Inside, a small part of her was celebrating. "So she didn't come?" thought the cat, suppressing the smile that threatened to appear. "Hell, looks like the elf gave up. Perfect, that means I can give her the best gift of all." Her tail wagged discreetly, trying to maintain a calm facade, although inside she was celebrating her victory. "Well, don't worry," Aki said, squeezing Belle's hand affectionately. "I'm sure he'll see you later. For now, enjoy your party." "You're right," Belle replied, regaining his usual smile. Maich raised his wine glass while Lyle grabbed the entire bottle. Great. Time to celebrate. Happy birthday, Belle. Happy birthday. They all repeated in unison. Naza brought the food, a huge feast. Plates piled high with food, perfectly cooked meats, and a cake in the center with a small improvised decoration. Thanks to the fact that all of Apollo's homosexual fortune now belonged to them, they could afford such luxuries. Goodbye to the days of poverty. Lyle, reclining on the sofa in a relaxed manner, crossed her arms with a smile as she surveyed the feast. Wow, you really outdid yourself, Naza. It almost seems like you're trying to steal those two's boyfriends. Hey, don't start. I'm just telling the truth, laughed the wolf. Anyway, happy birthday, Belle. Thank you, Lyle, the boy said sincerely. Despite the fact that they both fought with everything they had in the Colosseum, they were now very good friends. In fact, neither of them ever held a grudge. There were even times when he made advances towards her, which is why Aki and Alicia didn't like them living under the same roof. Aki approached him from the side, her ears twitching with excitement. She couldn't wait to give him her gift, but for now she had to keep it safe. Come on, eat, Belle. Naza cooked all this for you, she said with a charming smile. The albino nodded and took a seat at the table. Thank you, Naza. Everything looks amazing. Don't look at it so much and just try it, the she-wolf replied, laughing as she served her dish. And so, amid laughter, jokes, and a warm atmosphere, bellcranel's small but meaningful birthday celebration began. Aki gazed at him tenderly from her seat. Seeing him laugh, seeing how he appreciated every little gesture, reminded her exactly why she loved him so much. Yes, this is the perfect moment. After lunch I'll give her my gift, she thought, looking at the small package wrapped with red ribbon that she had hidden among her things. Her heart pounded with excitement. She was convinced this time it would be her gift that Belle would remember for the rest of his life. This time I would beat Alicia. The meal had been a success. Naza, with her natural talent for flavors, had managed to satisfy everyone so much that even Lyle had no qualms about having seconds. The atmosphere inside the Maich family headquarters was warm, calm, and full of that energy that can only come from a group that has shared countless battles and laughs together. A genuine group, not like other families where many didn't even know each other. Empty plates and half-full glasses rested on the table. Some were already reclining in their chairs, others were chatting and enjoying the moment. Belle smiled happily, with a relaxed and sincere expression of someone who had completely forgotten the weariness of the dungeon. He never imagined his birthday would be like this, surrounded by people he considered family, listening to laughter, jokes, and pleasant conversations. Oh, that was incredible, he said, putting his cutlery aside and sighing contentedly. Naza, you've outdone yourself. The girl smiled proudly, crossing her arms. HMPH, I expected nothing less from myself. Although don't think it was free, she said mockingly. Making that much food wasn't easy, you know. Lyle let out a laugh, stretching lazily. Of course, the miser doesn't even spare our dear Belle. Hey. Naza shot him a murderous look, though the smile never left her lips. Maich chimed in, laughing and raising his glass. Let's leave the arguments for later. I think the most anticipated moment of the night has arrived, don't you think? Everyone's eyes turned towards him, and Aki, who until then had been absent-mindedly playing with his tail, immediately straightened up. Is it time for the gifts? She asked, holding back her excitement. The same, replied the god with a broad smile. Although first, I think I'll start as the family's god. Belle settled in, curious and anxious at the same time. Maich got up from his seat and walked calmly to a small piece of furniture at the back of the room. From there he took out something wrapped in blue cloth. I had some errands to run, he explained, turning back to Belle. You know how you are, you always take better care of other people's weapons than your own. Your armor is a prime example. It never lasts more than a season. With a smile, he handed her the gift. Belle carefully took it and unwrapped it. His eyes widened in surprise at the sight of his dagger's new sheath, finely crafted, reinforced dark leather. It was clearly of very good quality. Kami-sama, this is the young man stammered in amazement. The old one was already worn out, the god said in a paternal tone. And I thought that if you're going to keep going down to the dungeon, you deserve the best equipment. I was planning to give you armor, but it was going to take longer to make, heh. Belle smiled broadly, standing up to hug him. Thank you, Kami-sama. Really. Maich reciprocated the gesture, laughing. No thanks, Belle. Just promise me you'll take good care of her and yourself. Always, replied the albino with a determined smile. Naza coughed softly, catching his attention. Well, I guess it's my turn. He crossed his arms and looked away with a mixture of pride and slight discomfort. I didn't buy anything. Belle looked at her, confused. Huh? You're a rat. Lyle shouted, making Naza frown. Before you say anything, she added quickly, I paid for part of the meal with my own money. And considering how expensive everything was, that counts as a gift and all my savings went into that. I don't have any left to buy a gift, I'm sorry. Belle couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, Naza. It was the best gift ever, thank you so much, she said sincerely. The girl looked away somewhat sadly, although her tail wagged happily from side to side. HMPH, you'd better remember that. Lyle then stood up, stretching his arms and approaching Belle with his usual relaxed expression. Well, I guess it's my turn. She had left a box on one of the sofas, which she picked up. She threw it with an agile movement towards Belle, who barely managed to catch it before it hit her face. 10. What is this? He asked, still surprised. Open it, replied the she-wolf with an amused smile. Inside was a pair of dark leather shoes, of good quality and visibly durable. Yours already looked like museum pieces, Lyle joked. I thought you might like something that won't fall apart mid-race. Elle let out a genuine laugh. Thank you, Lyle. I really needed them. Yes, don't get too excited. I just want you to stop looking like a beggar when you walk around town, she added mockingly, though the gentleness in her gaze made it clear she was happy to see him happy. The group laughed at the same time, filling the room with that kind of joy that feels like home. Aki watched everything from her seat, her heart beating strongly. He was on duty. She stood up slowly, her expression a mixture of nervousness and excitement. In her hand she carried a medium-sized package, carefully wrapped and tied with a red ribbon. Well, I think it's my turn, he said, stepping forward to stand in front of Belle. The girl looked at her with curiosity and a kind smile. Aki, did you prepare something for me too? Of course, she replied, smiling broadly. I couldn't be left out, you're my boyfriend after all. What kind of girlfriend would I be if I didn't give you a present? He handed it to him carefully. Belle took it, somewhat puzzled by the weight and shape of the package. He opened it patiently, removing the tape and the fabric, taking care not to tear it. Inside he found a carefully folded cloak. It was a deep blue with fine silver gray edges. But what stood out most was the hand-embroidered Maich family emblem in the center, a delicate work, full of tiny details. Elle held it in his hands, surprised. Aki, this. I embroidered it myself, she interrupted, blushing slightly. I wanted you to have something to remind you who you are and who's with you. Not just as an adventurer, but as part of your family. Her ears twitched nervously, but her gaze remained steady. Every stitch I made was with you in mind, Belle. How much you've grown, and how proud I am of you. And how much I love you. The boy didn't know what to say for a few seconds. He ran his fingers over the emblem, feeling the texture of the embroidered thread. It was a perfect piece of work, but beyond that, it conveyed affection, Aki's love for him. Aki, she's beautiful, he finally said in a soft voice. Thank you. She smiled and for a moment her eyes softened so much that they seemed to glow. That's not all, he added, extending another small package. Belle carefully took it and opened it. Inside she found a hardcover album, bound in light brown leather. On the cover, in slightly crooked gold lettering, probably embroidered by Aki herself, it read. Our Adventures. Belle opened it curiously. The first pages already had some photos pasted in, one of Aki with a surprised face, while Belle gave her a kiss on the cheek, another where Alicia appeared hugging them both after a mission, and one more with all the family members gathered in the living room, laughing. Belle smiled at the sight of them, laughing softly between each one. But when she reached the end of the filled pages, she realized that there were still many blank ones, too many blank ones. I thought we could fill it together, Aki said softly. You, me and Alicia, of course. The elf's name echoed faintly in the air. Up until that moment, no one had mentioned her again, and everyone knew that she had not yet appeared. Belle looked down for a moment. Yes, I would like that, he finally said, smiling with a touch of melancholy. To fill it with all of you. Aki nodded, but her smile faded for barely a second. Not because she wasn't happy, but because she saw Belle's eyes, however unconsciously, searching for the door. Alicia still hasn't arrived, he thought. What is that silly girl doing to miss such a special day? She tried to shake off that thought, smiling again. So, do you like it? Elle looked up with that smile that always managed to disarm her. I love it, Aki. I couldn't have asked for anything better, I love you. She let out a giggle, somewhere between nervous, embarrassed, and relieved. I knew you'd like it, and I love you too. Maich, observing the scene with tenderness, nodded contentedly. I think this has been a perfect birthday, don't you think, Belle? The young man nodded, looking at everyone with sincere gratitude. Yes, really. I don't know how to thank you. You are all the best thing that has ever happened to me. Naza pretended to clean something from her eye. Ah, enough with the cheesy stuff or I'll cry, he joked. Lyle stretched in his seat. Then let's have a toast before he starts getting sentimental again. The glasses were raised, laughter filled the room again, and for a moment everything was perfect. But Aki, who was watching Bell as he laughed with the others, noticed that his gaze would occasionally wander towards the door, as if he were expecting a familiar figure to appear at any moment. "Alicia, where are you?" thought Belle, clutching the closed album. However, she decided not to let that ruin the moment. Meanwhile, Aki smiled happily and proudly for having achieved her goal. The night was still alive, and although Alicia had not yet appeared, Aki knew that this moment, this warm and sincere celebration, would be something that Belle would never forget. And in silence, while the god and his children laughed at whatever they were talking about, Aki allowed herself a simple, almost selfish thought. Today was finally my day with him. Some time later. The hustle and bustle of the day had faded. The streets of Aario were enveloped in that unique calm that comes when night falls over the city. Magical lanterns illuminated the paths, and the cool air caressed Aki's ears, gently stirring her hair. She walked with a calm gait, clutching her bag to her chest, while a smile remained firm on her lips and her tail wagged from side to side. The day had been perfect. She had managed to give Belle his gift, she had seen his smile, that sincere smile that made her forget all her insecurities and that she liked so much, and above all she had achieved what she wanted most, for him to be happy. I can't wait to fill that album with photos of us," she whispered softly, her cheek slightly flushed. Just imagining it gave her a kind of warmth in her chest. Belle holding the camera, trying to strike a nice pose, but ending up laughing mid-shot. Or Alicia hugging them both while Anaza complained from the side about having to take the picture. All of that was part of his dream, to fill those pages with memories, with moments that would be preserved forever. "Yes, it was definitely the best gift I could have thought of," she said to herself proudly. He crossed one of the main streets and turned down a narrow alley that served as a shortcut to the area where the Twilight Mansion was located. Aki took a deep breath. His heart was still beating fast, as if he were still excited by everything that had happened. Although he did recall a certain detail. "I wonder why Alicia didn't show up to the party," she whispered, puzzled. It was rare. Alicia loved Belle too much to miss something like this. She was just as excited as she was about that day. That's why her not showing up to be with her boyfriend was strange, very strange. Alicia giving me the opportunity to monopolize Belle all to myself on such an important day, she thought, tapping her chin with a finger. I practically came across as the sweet girlfriend who stood by her boyfriend on his special day, and she as the indifferent girlfriend who didn't even wish him a happy birthday. Alicia was evil, doing that to Belle. It was unforgivable. But even so, a victorious smile formed on the cat's face. Or maybe he gave up when he saw that my gift was much better. Yes, that must have been it. Poor Alicia, I'll have to go and comfort her once I get to headquarters. Haha, I won this time, Alicia. Good luck next time, ha 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 ha. Little by little the cat's laughter diminished, as did her steps, until she stopped in the middle of the street. Even though she wanted to keep laughing, there was something that wouldn't leave her alone. Something was slipping through his fingers. Yesterday Alicia said she was going to buy a ribbon because she already had the gift. She seemed strange when she said that. Furthermore, he never saw her buy a gift in the days prior. Suspicious. Very suspicious. And then he remembered the words. What Lyle told him yesterday. But don't worry, she's not competing with you. You should worry more about the elf who probably has some dark plans out there. Aki's eyes widened in shock as she finally understood everything. Alicia. That elf. She was always one step ahead of her. She had another goal in mind. And that was. That wretched elf. And without thinking twice, she turned around and started running towards her boyfriend's headquarters. She had to get there as soon as possible before it was too late for her. Han Bell. He was walking through the dark corridors of his headquarters with Aki's gifts in his hands. The rest of his family had already gone to sleep, only he stayed a little longer in the living room tidying up a few things, even though Maich told him that they would all do it together tomorrow. A small smile played on her face as she looked at the album and cape that the cat had given her. To this day I still wonder what I did to deserve such a wonderful woman, he whispered affectionately. He truly loved Aki very much. Since he met her, she had done nothing but help him, and he owed her. And although it sounds like he was a womanizer, he also loved Alicia very much. He loved them both very much, and every day he tried hard to be the best boyfriend and not disappoint them. But going back to the beginning. Although he felt very happy, he was also somewhat downcast because the beautiful elf was not present on his birthday. I missed her. Where are you, Alice? He whispered, wanting to see the elf's beautiful smile. Letting out a dejected sigh, he continued walking through the dark corridors until he reached his room and went inside. The room was dark, by the way. Belle simply placed the album and cape carefully on a small table next to the door and then turned on the light. And when he did, his heart almost stopped because of what he saw. Hello Belle Facing him was none other than his girlfriend Alicia, sitting on his bed. The sheets had been changed for red ones and the pillows for heart-shaped ones with rose petals scattered around the place. The scent in the air was different, an intoxicating aroma. But what made Belle's heart beat the most was seeing the elf. She had a gift ribbon tied to her head that made it look like she had rabbit ears. Yes, in the end she decided on a small ribbon. And the most surprising thing was her clothing. The nightgown that covered her entire body, which was practically transparent. You could perfectly see her underwear underneath it. Hee. Alicia's face was completely red, a sign that she felt very embarrassed by what she was doing. She was an elf after all. But I still wanted to do it. She's ready to have that magical moment with Belle. The unite in body and soul. Hey Alicia, what is this? Belle whispered in shock, feeling the atmosphere affecting him. Happy birthday, Belle. She exclaimed with an embarrassed smile. I brought you your present and it's me. Belle didn't know what to say. Alicia had really caught him off guard. And if Alicia was able to achieve that, it was thanks to Lyle, who left Belle's bedroom windows open so she could enter and also change the sheets to create the right atmosphere. The she-wolf had been an ally of the elf behind Aki's back. Hey Alicia, Belle whispered, not knowing what to say. Don't say anything, Belle, Alice said shyly. Tonight is all yours, so enjoy it. The atmosphere was changing to a warmer one. Something could happen at any moment. But before Alicia could say anything else. Belle. The wild Aki entered through the window, surprising Belle and Alicia. Aki, Belle whispered when he saw the cat. No, thought Alice, alarmed as she saw an intruder arrive. The cat, after entering through the window, stood at attention and looked all around, noticing Alice and the way she was dressed. What I suspected turned out to be true. Alicia, you're a traitor. Aki shouted, her cheeks flushed. Alicia, who was still in Belle's bed, instinctively covered herself with a red blanket that was nearby. What are you doing here, Aki? Don't you know how to get in through the door or what? She replied, completely blushing. Of course not when I smell betrayal. Aki shouted, pointing her finger at her. So this was your famous ribbon, huh? I knew you were up to something from the start. I don't understand anything, Belle whispered. There's nothing to understand, Belle. This elf planned a nighttime assault against your purity. Don't say that. It wasn't anything bad. I just wanted to give her a romantic surprise. Romantic? That sounds more like an ambush than a surprise. Aki shouted, her tail bristling. Look at your face, you're redder than a tomato. You'd be red too if someone came in through the window screaming like a madwoman when you're about to have a sweet moment with your boyfriend, yelled the elf. That doesn't change the fact that you were trying to monopolize Belle behind my back. I wasn't trying to hog it. I just wanted to do something nice. It's her birthday. Alicia replied indignantly. Meanwhile, Aki crossed her arms and looked at Alicia with a disappointed expression. So that was your gift. A ribbon and a scene from a romance novel. Very original, Alicia. Very elven. Hey. Alice puffed out her cheeks, offended. I just wanted to be creative. That's not creativity, that's temptation. And your problem is that you can't stand that Belle likes my idea. You didn't even give him time to say if he liked it. I came in just in time to save him. Save him from what? He hadn't even done anything. You came in like a madwoman. Of course I went in like that. Because I could smell the danger from miles away. It wasn't danger, it was perfume. Exactly. Danger disguised as perfume. Aki, this was my moment. An important moment that we would talk about together. Not doing it behind our backs. Shut up already, damn it, let others sleep. At that moment, Naz's scream was heard from the other room, causing both of them to fall silent. Have hex, all three of you, but let people sleep, you bastards. And to top it all off, Lyle's scream was heard from the other room, making the cat and the elf blush. After that, silence reigned in the place. Alicia, Belle, and Aki just looked at each other in embarrassment after Lyle's last scream. The heat had returned to the room. Hee. And Belle could only laugh slightly nervously, sensing that something was approaching. While Alicia, still with red ears, saw Belle and then Aki. Unable to stop herself, she bit her lip in frustration and made her decision. Of the same kind. He whispered, capturing the attention of both of them. I've been mentally preparing for this day for a long time and I'm not going to back down. Human and cat just listened in shock to the elf's declaration, seeing the determination in her eyes. And I don't care if Aki is present, if you want you can leave or stay, I don't care, but you're not going to interrupt this. Alicia, Aki whispered in shock. This is my night. And with that said, the elf took Belle's arm and pulled him towards her, and they lay down on the bed as she began to kiss him. Aki just watched, very embarrassed, unable to believe that the elf had been so bold. It was clear that she had been mentally preparing for it. Her cheeks only burned more and more when she saw them, not knowing whether to leave or They're idiots. And with that said, the cat also jumped onto the bed, much to Belle's surprise, who was still trying to process everything. At night, the clothes of the three of them flew all over the room accompanied by all kinds of sounds. Now, that birthday would definitely be one that Belle would never forget. And while Maich was lying in his bed with earplugs in and a smile on his face enjoying the night. Maich always wore earplugs to sleep so he didn't notice anything, neither the screams nor other things. Unlike two other girls. Wow. That was all Naz and Lyle could manage to say in their respective rooms. That was an unforgettable night. And let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.